Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming you guys. Welcome to What's Hung You. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is the second day of our course where I'm going to be starting with meditation, guiding you guys in a meditation session of breathing mindfulness meditation. We'll start with the chanting, then you'll hear some guidance. Then we're going to go into the quiet period where we're just all meditating. Then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting. And then afterwards, I'll start class, which is the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is where I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of exactly how to move the mind to this enlightened mental state through this Eightfold Path. You're going to need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards. You're going to need to revisit it multiple times. You can't just learn it one time and then boom, you got it. You're going to actually need to revisit this multiple times. So we're going to spend the entire morning learning this. We'll take our mid-morning break, and this will take us all the way up to lunch. Then after lunch, I'm going to share with you guys the ins and outs of meditation so that you can learn all about breathing mindfulness meditation. And then, of course, we'll do a session together as well. So welcome to all of you guys. If you'd like to join along, you're more than welcome to in the meditation and the chanting, and then I'll come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Otang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Namang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rogavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโหตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิ สวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามนุสนังปุโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Today is actually a really big holiday in Thailand. This is denoting the time over 2,500 years ago during the lifetime of the Buddha, when 1,250 enlightened beings came to where the Buddha was, because the Buddha taught at multiple different places throughout Northeast India, and people were dispersed all over the countryside, and the Buddha would move around to different places. And without anybody coordinating with each other, these 1,250 people who had gotten to enlightenment through the teachings of the Buddha came to the location where he's at. So this was kind of a time that people celebrated as, wow, look at all these people, their mind is kind of guided to do the same thing on the same day. So it's celebrated as a big holiday, and it's based on the lunar calendar. It's called Makhabucha Day. So I think one of the best ways to celebrate Makhabucha Day is to actually learn the path to enlightenment. This is a ideal time to actually be learning the Eightfold Path, because all of those 1,250 people would have known this path inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. In order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to commit this to your memory so that you can then actually practice it. But remember, with all the teachings of the Buddha, you're never interested in believing the teachings. I'm going to walk you through this path with the original words of the Buddha, showing you how to learn it, investigate and examine it, reflecting on it to verify if it's true or false, and then actually practicing it so that you can actually experience the results of this enlightened mental state, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state that you can train your mind to be able to attain. And I'm going to be stopping a few times in order to open up for questions, and we're even going to take a break because it's going to take me about 2.5 hours to actually teach this to you. So we're going to take our time walking through it, and like I mentioned, we'll take a break, but as you guys have questions, remember we have the microphones here for you guys to ask questions. And then for anybody online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. So this Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha, and everything else that he taught plugs into this in one way or another. One of the ways that you can look at the Eightfold Path is that if you had a speaker system and there were 8 individual dials and you're trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers, you would kind of tweak these 8 dials in order to be able to get a better and better quality sound out of these speakers. And that's what this is, that if you're interested in getting a better and better quality performing mind, you would need to tweak these 8 individual dials and kind of dial this into your life closer and closer. So it starts with right view, and then it goes right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And each one of these have teachings behind them that you need to be able to understand. Oftentimes people are spending a lot of time meditating because they think that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated and instantly got to enlightenment. You would never get to enlightenment just by meditating. Meditation is just one component of this particular path. You need the entire path in order to be able to get to enlightenment. It's organized into 3 sections: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And each one of these build on each other. You wouldn't be able to practice one without the other. So you're going to need to know each one of these. And I put this in reverse order because right view forms the foundation. The wisdom section is like the foundation of the path, and everything else builds on top of that. So I'm going to, again, walk you through this so that you can understand it, and feel free to ask questions as we go. I'm going to be stopping a few times to help you guys ask questions. So here's the words of the Buddha on right view from the Eightfold Path. He says, "In what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." So what he's doing here in right view is he's actually pointing to another teaching, because the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching and everything else plugs into it. What he's doing is he's pointing to what's called the Four Noble Truths, and he's saying that's right view from the Eightfold Path. So underneath of this line right here, I have the top section of the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths goes on from here, but I have this top section so you can see the connection between right view and the Four Noble Truths. So you can build confidence that, yes, what the Buddha is talking about as right view in the Eightfold Path is the Four Noble Truths. And then now I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths, which integrates into the Eightfold Path. In order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the 3 universal truths. These are building blocks to help you to be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. So I'm going to walk you through this so that you can learn it, reflect on it, and practice it. And that's what you need to be able to do in order to be able to cultivate the wisdom. Remember, the Buddha is not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And these universal truths are going to help you to be able to understand the way the world is. And now you don't believe that, but you independently verify it. So we call this the 3 universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true. But in order for you to get the benefit, you need to know they're true. And that's why you need to independently verify this. I'll show you how this works. So first, you do the intellectual learning, the investigation, the examination. So here, let me teach you what this first universal truth of impermanence is all about. What the Buddha teaches you is that there's something called conditioned objects. Conditioned objects, they arise, they change, and they fade away. They are impermanent, meaning not permanent. They are constantly changing. Anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these are all impermanent. They're constantly changing. They're called conditioned objects. They arise, change, and fade away. Then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. They are permanent. Enlightenment is that way. It's an unconditioned mental state, as well as the natural laws that the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, those natural laws that existed back then are the same natural laws that exist today. They are unconditioned. They don't change. They don't arise, change, or fade away. Now, people's understanding of those natural laws, that changed because it's something that people have in their mind, but the natural laws themselves have not changed. That's why we can learn his teachings and actually get to enlightenment today through the cultivation of that wisdom. But everything in the material world around you is all impermanent. Anything you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. This is all constantly changing. Okay, so this is the intellectual part. I just shared it with you in about 2 minutes, helping you to understand what is the universal truth of impermanence. But now you don't believe that. You move into reflection to start trying to look around the world to independently verify this. Because if this is a universal truth, that means you can independently verify it. Independent of me, you should be able to independently see that, yes, what David just said is 100% the truth. So what you do is you start looking around the world to see if what I shared with you is true. Because I said anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind are all impermanent. So now I suggest you start with things that you're familiar with, like this physical body. Ask yourself, is this body permanent, meaning that it's always the same and it's never changing? Or is this body impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? So what would you say? Is the body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing, right? Ever since the egg and the sperm came together, this body has been changing. We get taller, we get shorter, we get bigger, we get smaller, right? Our teeth grow in and then they fall out, and then more teeth grow in, and then we get cavities, we get pimples, wrinkles, moles, we get gray hair, we start losing our hair. We have all this change that's happening with the physical body, right? It's constantly changing. What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life, your entire life. And if they're impermanent, then that means you've had people coming and going in and out of your life your entire life. So would you say your relationships are permanent or impermanent? You guys agree? They're impermanent, right? People are constantly coming in and out of your life. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, yeah. Maybe wish it was permanent, right? But it's not. It's impermanent, right? It's going up and down and up and down. Sometimes it goes up, up, up. Sometimes it goes down, 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 right? This is constant change. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? You guys agree? Is it impermanent? Yeah, it's constantly changing, right? It's sun, rain, some places snow, sleet, tornado, hurricane, typhoon, all these different things are constantly changing. So we could go on and on and on with this, right? We could just keep looking around the world. And if that's what you need to do that, because there's plenty of examples of it all around you. When you look out at the trees and you see green leaves in the tree and brown on the ground, that's change. That's impermanence. When you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk, this is impermanence. You can see there's certain people here in the class today that weren't here yesterday. This is change. You can see the wood planks on the floor of the temple. Some of them are longer or shorter. Some of them are different colors than others. This is constant change that you're going to see in the world around you. So this is a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. So the Buddha is explaining to you the way the world is, because what the mind in the enlightened state has is a lack of wisdom. It doesn't understand the world that it lives in. And that's why it struggles and has difficulties and having stress and anxiety and all these other feelings. So you need to awaken or cultivate wisdom to how the world is. And this is the first building block to help you understand when we get to the Four Noble Truths. Then there's the universal truth of discontentedness. The universal truth of discontentedness is explaining the unenlightened mind and what you'll experience in the unenlightened state. This is the Buddha describing that the unenlightened mind experiences conditioned feelings. What a conditioned feeling is that based on some condition, the mind is then going to experience a feeling. So there's pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And these are conditional, that there needs to be some condition met in order for that feeling to be experienced. So for example, if you look outside and you see it's sunny and you get really happy and excited about that, that's a conditioned feeling, that based on the condition that the sun is present, then you will be happy, right? So there's this happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. Very pleasant for the mind to experience, but it's conditional. It can only exist if some condition is met. And then there's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, agitation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful to experience. And those, once again, are based on some condition. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. But shyness is a good example. It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or say you're on public transportation and somebody you don't know comes and sits really close to you and your body's touching their body. You might say it's not painful, it's not pleasant, the mind's just kind of like uncomfortable, it's dissatisfied. It's neither painful nor pleasant, right? So these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind is experiencing. And you can independently verify this because you know your mind is unenlightened, and you can ask yourself, are there any feelings that you experience that don't fit into one of these three categories? And if you think there is, just let me know when we get to the question period, and I'll help you to understand that. So essentially what an unenlightened being is experiencing is it's forming its inner feelings on some condition. That you wake up in the morning, you see it's sunny, you get so excited and happy. Yay, I'm going to go hiking today. I've been wanting to go on this hiking trail for a really long time. I'm going to call my friends. This is going to be a great time. You're going to go hiking. You get so excited about it because the sun is out. Right? That's the condition that has to be met in order for the mind to be excited. But then you go take a shower and you come out and you see it's raining. And now you're angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed because now you can't go hiking. Right? That's what an unenlightened being experiences. But the enlightened being is beyond that. When they wake up in the morning, they're already happy and they see that it's sunny outside. It's like, sweet, I'm going to go hiking today. I've been interested in going on that trail. I'm going to call my friends. We're going to have a blast. This is going to be a great time. And now you go take a shower. And when you come out, it's raining. It's like, oh, okay, well, it's raining. So I guess I'm not going hiking. Maybe I'll stay home and read a book. Maybe I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll invite my friends over. We'll cook some food, cook some dinner. You can maintain your happiness and joy because it wasn't based on the sun. This is the reason why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the unenlightened mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition, and that condition is not permanent. So therefore your happiness is not permanent. So the unenlightened mind with its discontentedness is shaken up. It's uncalm, it's unsteady. It's going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before you get agitated or annoyed about something. Okay? So in most places that you study the teachings of the Buddha, they will refer to this as suffering. If you've read books, if you've talked to other people, they might actually talk about this as suffering. The word suffering doesn't explain what the Buddha's sharing, and that's why I use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. The word suffering describes the painful feelings really, really well. Right? When you're angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling, if there's guilt and shame and stress and anxiety, you might say you're suffering in that situation. But if you're excited and happy, would you say you were suffering? Like if your boss came in and said, hey, I'm going to give you a $20,000 a year raise, and you got really excited about that, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not, right? Or if that person you don't know came and sat next to you on the bus and your body was touching their body, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not. Right? So this word discontentedness actually brings your mind to fully understand the full spectrum of feelings and emotions that the Buddha is talking about that exist in the unenlightened mind. Because you need to be able to understand that these pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. Remember, these are conditioned pleasant feelings, because if you can only be happy when certain conditions are met, then that means your happiness is not permanent. So if my mom and dad do this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my boss does this, if my bank account is this, if the weather is this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, then I will be happy, right? So that's conditional. And that means your happiness is shrinking the more conditions that you have. So if you get really excited when you get a brand new job, 5 years later, when the company goes out of business or they lay you off or you get fired, you'll be angry or frustrated, right? Because the mind is you'll see what is actually going on, but nonetheless, the painful feelings are waiting for you right around the corner. If you allow the mind to get conditional, pleasant feelings, then the painful ones are waiting right around the corner. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is get beyond the conditionality of your feelings and get to unconditioned mental states where your mind can always be cheerful. It can always be bright and glad and uplifted at all times. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for that to occur. So this word discontentedness is a much better way to explain this, because you need to be able to see these conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones, in the neither painful nor pleasant. If you allow your mind to get the temporary happiness, you never get to the permanent happiness, because the mind is still basing its feelings on some condition. So if we use the word suffering, it only explains the painful feelings. You're only understanding about 33% of what the Buddha was teaching on this important topic. That means you're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to the ultimate goal of enlightenment? So that's why I don't use the word suffering here. So I would encourage you to use discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. This is explaining the unenlightened mind and how it experiences conditioned feelings. And you can independently verify this through your own investigation and reflection. Then there's the universal truth of non-self. I'll explain to you guys what this is, because this is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. But let me explain the problem first, and then you'll actually understand the solution when we talk about the solution. So in the teachings of the Buddha, you guys were introduced yesterday to the 10 fetters, the 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind that the Buddha discovered that need to be uprooted and eliminated out of the mind. Remember, they're called fetters because during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would put a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and this is how they would keep you confined to a certain area. If you were like a prisoner, they would just keep you out in the middle of a field, where today we put prisoners in jail cells. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they attached a fetter to your ankle. So when he discovered these 10 individual pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped or confined in a certain place, which is the unenlightened mental state. It keeps experiencing the anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. But just like a prisoner, if you release the shackle and chain and the ball off the ankle and they're now free, they're liberated, the same thing is true about the mind, that if you eliminate these 10 individual fetters, it will produce liberation or freedom of mind. When you're angry and sad and frustrated and stressed and having anxiety, your mind's not free. It's bound up, right? So you need to get free of these 10 fetters. So the very first fetter, if you guys remember, is personal existence view. This is where the mind clings to this body or this mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person. The self-image and the self-identity, the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if you spill something on your clothing, for example, and you were embarrassed in this situation, that's your personal existence view. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. The mind's confused. It thinks that this body is you, and it's clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent and wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. Maybe you looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole, or you had gray hair, or you started losing your hair, or you started getting a little bit extra fat here or there, or maybe a lot of extra fat here and there, right? And maybe you were shaken up by that. Or maybe you were at your closet thinking, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And maybe you put on a set of clothes and you looked in the mirror and you're like, no, that's not how I want to look. And you put on another set and you're like, no, that's not how I want to look. And then you put on another set and you're like, all right, now I can go outside. I feel comfortable because I look the way that I want to look. Or if you were like me, when I was a kid, I used to get out gel and mousse and I would run it through my hair and try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. And I couldn't go to school until every little hair was in the right spot. And sometimes I would do this so long, I would actually miss the school bus on the way to school. So this is personal existence view, clinging to the body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, clinging to that self-image, thinking that this is who you are. Then there's the self-identity. This is like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You could be clinging to any of this as an identity of who you think you are as a person. So, for example, I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Lithuanian, I am German, I am Chinese, I am Spanish. Any of this, I am an Aussie, I am a Brit, right? You could have any number of things. And if you cling to this in your mind, now when you're in, say, like a restaurant and 2 tables over, they say all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. You're like, wow, they're talking about me. And you get so excited. And now you're having those conditioned pleasant feelings based on hearing this thing. But then it's only a matter of time, because of impermanence, that 2 tables over, somebody's saying something degrading or disparaging about some part of the identity that you're holding in your mind. And now you get angry or frustrated, right? Or say you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you think, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. And now when you guys are together, there's a certain amount of comfort. But when you guys break up, your mind doesn't identify with I am single. And now you feel very uncomfortable because you don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend anymore. And you might feel like the way to solve that is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. You might have felt like that or experienced that at different times in your life. Or say you have a certain job or occupation that you identify with this as who you are as a person. Maybe I am a police officer. And now, as long as you're doing that job, you feel great. But then when you maybe retire, or you get injured, or you lose your job, and now you're driving a taxi, your mind doesn't identify that way, and now you feel like less of a person. You feel unwhole. In fact, some people have this so strong, they will go to their parents in their home country, and they will say, Mom and Dad, I don't know who I am anymore. I need to go find myself. I need to find my true self. And people come to places like Thailand to find their self, right? Well, what the Buddha teaches you with the universal truth of non-self is there is no self. You're not going to find yourself here in Thailand because it doesn't exist. Instead, what somebody might do is they might come here and find new friends, new activities, new hobbies, maybe a new job, and then they go back home to their home country and they say, Mom and Dad, I found myself. I know who I am again. I feel so great. Right? This is just the mind holding on to any particular aspect about your self-image or your self-identity, clinging to that, thinking that that's who you are. But then as soon as all that stuff changes, you're going to be right back in the same issue, that you don't know who you are anymore, because all that stuff is going to change. So the Buddha is teaching you that there is no self, that this body is not you, that this mind is not you. So there is a body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, and we call that a person, right? But that isn't you. It's not who you are as a person. Sometimes people do this even with decisions, choices and decisions that they make. Like say in the past, if I use drugs and alcohol, I might have been taught to think I am an alcoholic or I am an addict. Right? And now whenever I think about that, even though it's been 10 years, maybe since I've had any kind of substances in the body, I might feel guilty and shameful. I might feel like less of a person because I'm thinking in my mind, I am an addict or I am an alcoholic. Well, this being used to make choices and decisions to use drugs and alcohol in the past, but I don't have to adopt that as my identity of who I am as a person. I don't need to hold that label in my mind. Or even like, I am a Buddhist teacher. I don't need to hold that in my mind as who I am as a person. That, yeah, I perform the role of a Buddhist teacher, but I don't need to adopt that identity in the mind. Because, yeah, some people are going to talk fondly about Buddhist teachers, but some people are going to talk unkindly about Buddhist teachers. And if I adopt that identity, if that's who I think I am, then when they talk that way, you'll be angry or frustrated. So you need to be able to realize non-self, where you learn techniques to strip away this idea, this delusion, this illusion that this body or this mind is you and who you are as a person. And that's what we call realizing non-self, that you realize that this body is not you and this mind is not you. But of course, you need to take care of it, even though you're not interested in grabbing onto it. So it's a matter of understanding this body was born on a land that is referred to as the USA. But I don't have to adopt the identity in the mind as I am American. I don't need to hold on to that. And just like you were born in a certain place, but your mind might have adopted this identity of who you think you are just based on where this being was born. And there's places that are incentivizing us to actually adopt this identity, right? We have national anthems, we have sports teams, we have flags. This is all the mind grabbing onto these things as who we think we are. And now we might cheer and cheer and cheer for that sports team. So all through our life, we've been accumulating this personal existence view. So sometimes when I talk about this, people understand it right away. Other times people have a really hard time. They think like, well, if I'm not this body and I'm not this mind, then who am I? Right? And the mind's still grasping to try to understand who am I? Then you need to be able to let go and not allow the mind to continue to grasp on that. So this is a little bit of the intellectual part of the personal existence view and the universal truth of non-self. But now remember, you need to independently verify this, even if you're not understanding this 100% right now, because I've seen some people take upwards of a year to understand this particular teaching. Even if you're not understanding it right now, you can still independently verify that there is no self. Here's how you do that. Think about when you were a child, your teenage years, your early adulthood, and then now. Think about your personality and your character during those 4 phases of your life. Has it been exactly the same that you've been thinking of yourself as the same, or has it been changing? It's changing, right? The way you think of yourself has been constantly changing. There you can see there's no permanent self. Here's another way. If your arm was cut off and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? You say no. What about the rest of you guys? You say no? What do you guys say? No, you're not less of a person? Okay, so there you can see intellectually, you understand that this body is not you, right? Because otherwise you would have answered that question differently. But see, the confusion that the mind has because of its personal existence view is in the heat of the moment when someone says, wow, you're so handsome. You're so beautiful. That shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes. You'll be like, oh, wow, they're talking about me, right? Or then when someone says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? Right? And now you'll be frustrated and angry. So here, intellectually, you can understand that this body is not you. Otherwise, you would have answered that question differently because there's less body. So that means there's less you. But you guys said, no, I'm not less of a person just because there's less body. So you can see that this body is not you. But in the heat of the moment, that personal existence view, that confusion kicks in. And that's where you're either going to have pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. And here's another way. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point to yourself? Okay. She's pointing there. Nancy's pointing there. All right. Josh is pointing there. All right. That's common. People will point here or here, different places. When you're pointing, you need to look at what you're pointing to. If you point here and you say, I am here, then you're pointing to a shirt. You need to ask yourself, is that you? That shirt you're wearing, is that who you are as a person? And I think you guys would probably agree that no, that shirt's not you, right? So if we took off the shirt and we hold it up and pointed to it, we say, is that you? And you say, no, that's not me. Okay, so throw that away. And now where are you? And then someone else might point, right? And now you've got that skin there. And you need to ask yourself, is that who you are? That skin that you've got, is that you? If we took off the skin and we held it up and pointed to it, is that you? That's not you, right? So we throw that away. Where are you? Someone might point again. And now we've got bones, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs and fluid. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you. But the mind's going to keep clinging to this, thinking that this is you. That's the personal existence view, that the mind's going to keep clinging to this, wanting this to be you, and it's craving that permanence and clinging to it. So I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have any questions about any of these, because these are building blocks to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths. Is there anything you guys would like to ask on these? Yep. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, David. I've been here several times, and today I'm thinking about this deeper about this non-self thing. It's easy to understand that we cut off the personal identity, as you mentioned, that you're American or I'm a Chinese, and we cut them off and let go because this is just an identity about yourself. Mm-hmm. I think this part is easy for me to digest, to understand. Okay, I just forget about I'm a Chinese, and it's hard for me to understand. Is about for example, the body. Sometimes when you say we take off the shirts, it's not us. But when we talk about ourselves, sometimes there's a saying that, okay, the world is impermanent, so nothing is so important, but only yourself. Like you need to take care of yourself, make yourself healthier, and the money is not important. Nothing is important, but just take care of yourself, because the body is the only thing that you own by yourself. Nothing else is owned by yourself. So when we talk about the body, then because when we lose the arm, then of course a part of our body just disappeared, and we feel uncomfortable and inconvenient when we lack of one arm. Mm-hmm. So is that still the confusing? Because everything else can be something you can throw away, but the only thing you cannot throw away is the body, because your mind is lying in the body. So
okay.
I don't know how to.
Let me help you with this. So in this first book, in chapter 16, I give you many different things you can do to strip away this personal existence view. But one of the things is you're going to need to change the way you think about this body and this mind and the things around you. Because right now you're thinking that this body is mine and it belongs to me. This isn't actually true. You're renting this body. You're a tenant. At some point, this being is no longer going to be in existence, and this body is going to deteriorate and go back to the earth, right? So this is not truly you. It doesn't belong to you. You're not possessing this body. You're just renting it like a temporary tenant. So once you come to understand that, you see that, yeah, this body is not me. This mind is not me. You can start to see that this body is not who you are as a person, that this body is going to be constantly changing. And as long as you cling to it as who you think you are, when it changes, you'll have discontent feelings. So in order to get to the peace and joy that the Buddha is describing, you need to get to the point where you understand there is a body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, and I need to take care of it like a good tenant. I need to take care of this property, but it doesn't belong to me. At some point, this being is going to no longer exist. So this me that the mind is trying to hold on to, you need to disassociate with that. Because one of the things that is the problem, like in the English language, we will say things like, I am angry, or I am hungry, I am thirsty. This is actually not true, because there's no I here. So you need to disassociate with this I. What's really true reality is this body needs food. That's what really is true reality. Or this body needs water. Or this mind is experiencing anger. That's true reality. But we will insert that I because the mind is holding on to that personal existence view. So you need to disassociate with this and come to understand that there is no I here. And this is going to help you to get free of that, where now you can think about it instead of like my phone, right? That's very possessive. It's the phone. Really, it's not mine. It doesn't belong to me because I'm just renting this phone, essentially. Even though it's been purchased and I use it, it's really just temporary. right? I'm just renting it. Essentially, someday it's no longer going to be in my possession. So all of these things are temporary and changing, and you need to be able to get the mind to the point where it doesn't have the illusion that any of this is permanent and that any of it defines who you are as a person. So that way you can take care of it like a good tenant, but you don't cling to it and want it to be permanent. And identify it as who you are as a person. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. All right, so one more thing, and then I'll teach you the Four Noble Truths. So there's craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations, holding, grasping, clinging. This is something that the unenlightened mind will do, where it's longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection. It's pulling towards the objects of its affection. It thinks that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So it chases and chases and chases and chases. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst that the mind thinks that something external is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction, where the mind thinks, I don't feel good here. I need something to feel better. What can I do? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll get some more money. That'll make me feel better. So now the mind will chase after that more money for a while. And if you get it, you'll be really happy. But if you don't, you'll be sad or frustrated. And then the mind's like, oh, okay, well, let me see. What else can I get? Oh, a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend. That'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. So the mind will chase after that for a while. And you might get your new boyfriend or your new girlfriend, and you'll be happy at the beginning, but then that'll fade away too. Right? And then the mind's like, what do I need to feel happy here? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll go to Thailand. That'll fix everything. Let me go to Thailand. And now you go to Thailand and you're so happy and excited when you come to Thailand. But then when it's time to go home, you feel frustrated. You don't want to go back, right? So the mind is trying to grab onto something and trying to get some kind of pleasant feelings. If you've ever walked in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you were like, oh, a brand new pair of shoes. Oh, I can't wait to get those on my feet. That's going to look so good. Or maybe it was a new phone or a new computer, a new video game, some jewelry or something like this. This is the mind longing, yearning for something external to try to get some type of satisfaction. This is called craving, desire, attachment. Do you guys know what this is? Have you experienced this in your mind where it's pulling towards something, chasing after things, right? Okay, so you guys know what this is. All right, so now we have everything we need to understand the Four Noble Truths, because this is going to help you establish right view, where in 4 simple statements, you can understand the problem that the Buddha discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward of how to actually fix it. And remember, you need to independently verify all of this. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness, those conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. That's the problem that you're experiencing, that the mind's shaken up. It's unsteady. It's uncalm. It's experiencing conditioned feelings, that you can only experience a feeling if there's some condition that is being met, right? That's the problem. Then the second noble truth is explaining the cause of that problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say that a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples to help you understand this. So the discontentedness, the conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, is caused by the craving, desire, attachment, the wants and expectations, the mind longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of its affection. It wants things to be permanent, when in reality you live in an impermanent world. So if the mind's chasing, and it gets what it wants, it experiences pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, and others. If the mind doesn't get what it wants, it experiences painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. Okay, and the mind's holding on, craving this permanence while you live in an impermanent world. Okay, so here's some examples. Think back to the boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. When you guys first got together, you were so happy and so excited. right? Because you got a new person in your life. They're showing you affection. They're calling you, checking in on you. They're sending you text messages. They might be inviting you to dinner or maybe to the movies. Maybe you're going to the park. Maybe you're walking around the park. Oh, the sun is shining. The birds are chirping. The butterflies are flying, right? There's great conversation. Maybe you're even having intimate contact. Right? You're getting all these pleasant feelings. But then over time, the relationship deteriorates and it starts to fall apart. And now at some point, you guys break up and now you're single. And the mind might be really frustrated or angry about this. Or you might be lonely or bored. Or you might be missing this person. This isn't your love that's causing those discontent feelings. What's causing it is craving, desire, attachment, the mind longing, yearning, craving permanence. As long as this person's in your life, you feel happy, you're getting what you want. But then when they're not in your life, your mind is experiencing those painful feelings like anger, sadness, loneliness, boredom, or missing this person. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. That doesn't cause painful feelings, but instead it's the craving for permanence. This relationship was always impermanent, but the mind didn't understand that. From the very beginning, this relationship was impermanent. At some point, this relationship was going to be over. Even if you guys lived together for the rest of your life, at some point you guys would have died, and now the relationship is over, right? But the mind was craving permanence. So think about when you maybe had a person close to you that has died, maybe grandma or grandpa, mom or dad, brothers or sisters, or some other close relative or friend. If you were grieving and sorrowful during that time, it wasn't your love or your care, your concern. It was your craving for permanence, wanting this person to be in your life permanently. Because if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy, excited. Grandma, grandpa's alive. Wonderful. You're really happy about that. But when the mind experiences this impermanence, the mind doesn't like that. And now it's grieving or sorrowful because the mind's not getting what it wants. So one of the ways to say this is the mind craves permanence. Another way to say it is that the mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change. When things are changing in your life, your mind doesn't like that. You can look at your life and you can see when things were changing the most, that's when you were struggling the most. When you were changing living locations, when you were changing jobs, when your relationships were changing, those were the times that your mind was struggling the most with stress and anxiety and frustration and all these other feelings, because the mind was holding on and craving permanence, but yet everything was changing in your life. And this was a real struggle for you. You can see this at weddings. If you go to weddings, you might see people crying at a wedding. Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, brothers and sisters. Because here's somebody going off into the world with somebody else. And it's like, that's my brother. That's my sister, right? Like they're holding on. They're craving permanence. They're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just what the mind does in the unenlightened state is it craves permanence. And now when this person's going off into the world, the mind really struggles. It's not love that's causing that, because if you love the person, you would like to see them be well. They're starting a new relationship. This is wonderful. They're going off in the world, getting married. Outstanding. You can also see this if you've ever seen children get dropped off at school. If children get dropped off at school, maybe they're 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, they're getting dropped off at school. The children might be crying, or the parents even might be crying when they're dropping their kids off at school, because the mind's holding on and it's craving permanence. And here you go, sending this being out into the world by themselves, right? And your mind's having to let go. And the mind doesn't like that. And the kids are crying and the parents are crying sometimes. It's not love, because if you love your child, getting an education is the best thing ever, right? Yeah, send the kid to school, let them get an education. That's not what's causing the grief and the sorrow, because of course the parents would like the kids to get an education. It's the mind holding on and craving permanence. Okay, so let me give you some other examples that don't involve relationships, because then you'll actually maybe be able to see this better. Because what I'm sharing with you is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's not the outside world. Sometimes people think that it's the outside world that's causing the anger and the sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. It's the mind itself having craving, desire, attachment. So think about if you got a brand new car. Right? If you got a brand new car and you saved up for this car, it's like your dream car. You saved for 10 years to get this car. And now you went down to the dealership and you paid for this car. And now you drove this car off the parking lot and you went to a store and you parked it. And then you go inside and you come out and there's a scratch on your car. It's like, oh my gosh, you might be so frustrated or so angry. It's not the scratch that's causing it. And it's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing the painful feeling of frustration and agitation. It's the mind craving permanence. The mind wants this car to look permanently beautiful, when in reality, it's not possible. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. It's only a matter of time before this car deteriorates because it's a conditioned object. It's going to erode, it changes, and then it's going to fade away, right? It's impermanent. But the mind craves permanence, and that's why it struggles and has difficulties in that situation. So remember, you can't believe what I'm saying. There's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You need to independently verify this for yourself so you can cultivate wisdom. So what I'm sharing with you here is that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing these discontent feelings because the mind's craving permanence. So take this into reflection and be able to independently verify it for yourself through your own direct experiences. Take a recent situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. It could have been this morning or yesterday or last week. Look at that situation with these fresh eyes, because what the mind will tend to do when it's experiencing these painful feelings is it'll think that someone else is causing it. You might have been blaming somebody else for the feelings that you were having. But now look at it with these fresh eyes. What was it that your mind was longing, yearning for? What were you craving? What were you expecting? And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy. But because the mind didn't get what it wanted or expected, there was some painful feeling like anger, sadness, frustration, or others. And if you can't see this, let me know, because I will help you. There's plenty of students over the years that have needed help with this. I had one student call me one time. They said, David, I've been studying with you for a little while, and I know that you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings, but I need to talk to you about this because I'm pretty sure that it's my wife who causes these feelings. And I said, okay, what do you have to talk about? They were like, well, I went to work the other day and my house looked beautiful. And when I came home, she had this craft project all over the house. And when I walked in, I got angry and frustrated. How did my mind cause that? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be angry? And I said, no, she didn't cause it. It was your own mind. That your mind had a craving for permanence. You wanted the house to look exactly the same when you came home as when you went to work. You were expecting it to look the same. The only thing that you've experienced here is change. That's it. When it goes from sun to rain, all that is change. When your bank account balance goes from here to here, all that is change. But the mind craves permanence. You can see in these examples, there's no other person even involved. When it goes from sun to rain, there's no other person involved. It's just you and your own mind. Or when your bank account balance goes from here to here, there's no other person involved. It's just you. Right? And now you can see that there's not other people that are causing these feelings. It's one's own mind. And if you're having trouble with this, let me know when we get to the question period and I will help you. Because when the mind thinks that it's the outside world that's causing these feelings, when it's other people, you'll tend to become unskillful. What you'll do is you'll tend to push people away, or you'll push a situation out of your life. This is called aversion, where you experience those painful feelings and you firmly believe that the problem is external, and you'll tend to push people away out of your life. You might have pushed away friends or family members out of your life. Or the second thing you'll do when you don't understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings is you'll be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll tend to put your expectations on people and try to control them and pressure them into doing things your way. And people might actually be doing this to you too, where they're pushing you away. They're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're putting their expectations on you. And that's the mind not understanding the second noble truth, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of its affection. And it can only be happy if it gets what it wants. So the mind not getting its cravings fulfilled, it feels those painful feelings, and it thinks the way to get to happiness is to push this person out of the way because they're not doing things my way. I don't want to be around them. Or let me yell and holler at them. Let me argue with them and try to kind of almost fear them into doing things my way. Or let me put my expectations on them. So if you look back over your life, every single time you've ever been angry or frustrated, it's been your own mind the whole time. I'm sure you've been in knockdown, drag out fights with people and arguments where you're trying to convince them to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to keep getting angry. They might have been doing something that's unwise, right? That's not what we're talking about here. We're just talking about what causes your mind to be frustrated and annoyed and all these other discontent feelings. They could have truly been doing something that's unwise, but that's not what's causing your mind to be angry and frustrated. The mind's craving permanence. I want everybody to do it this way. And if they do it this way, then I will be happy. But if they don't do it that way, the mind's going to be angry or frustrated. That's the craving for permanence while you live in an impermanent world. So we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here. We're just talking about what is causing these feelings, because you can't ever eliminate your anger and sadness and frustration, all these other feelings, if you don't know what's causing it. So you need to peer into it so that you can have this breakthrough to understanding what is actually causing these feelings. Okay, so this is the second noble truth, understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And this is very empowering, right? You don't need to feel guilty or shameful about this, because every being who's ever been born had the same thing, even the Buddha, right? That's how he was able to figure this out. So every being that's ever been born has experienced this. But once you come to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, this is very empowering, because if it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that means you can eliminate it, right? If it's other people who are causing you to experience these feelings, you can never eliminate it, because you can't change 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. It's just not possible, right? But since you can understand that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing these feelings, then the third noble truth is explaining to you that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting things to be permanent. Sometimes when I say this, people say, well, if I'm not doing that, wouldn't I swing all the way to the other side and be dull and lethargic and lazy? You might, but that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. That's what the unenlightened mind does. It'll tend to swing, and it can see these two extremes really well. It can see chase, 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 and it can see this dullness, this lethargic condition, almost exhaustion. The Buddha is teaching you to come to the middle, where you can gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests through wise decision making. So when the mind's chasing, 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 you can only be happy if you get what you want. And then when you're not getting what you want, you'll experience the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So the chasing is what's causing the discontent feeling, the craving, desire, attachment. So if you eliminate the cause, then you'll eliminate the effect. That's what the Buddha is teaching you in the third noble truth. And you can verify this too. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you were with. When you first broke up, you were angry, you were frustrated, you were lonely, you were bored, you were missing them. But at some point, your mind let go. You were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. Or if she wants to move to a different part of the world and she doesn't want to live around here, okay, that's fine, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But as long as you were holding on and craving for that person to be in your life, you were discontent. So your mind needs to let go and not have those cravings, desires, attachments. But the mind doesn't know how to do this in the unenlightened state. And that's where the fourth noble truth comes in. This is the solution of how to fix it. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in how to eliminate the longing, the yearning, and the forming your inner feelings based on external circumstances. It's called right view. It starts with that. That's what we're studying right now, is right view, right? You need to have the right view about what is actually causing these feelings. That if you have wrong view, you're going to be blaming other people for your feelings, and therefore you'll never actually fix it, because it's not other people that are causing these feelings. You'll go around the world trying to fix everybody else, trying to get everybody else to do things your way. But what the Buddha is doing with his very first teaching is he's teaching you to focus inward, to look at your own mind, and that your own mind needs to have some healing. You need to improve your own mind. That's what right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Okay, so before I move on, I'm going to let you guys ask questions about the Four Noble Truths, because it's so important that you establish right view. Because what you would like to do is now and forever, instead of blaming other people for the feelings that you have, is start looking inward. When you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're experiencing guilt or shame or fear or stress, anxiety, any of these feelings, instead of looking externally to blame other people, look inward and try to figure out, what are you craving? What are you longing for? Right? So say you show up to the airport and you notice that your flight is delayed or it's canceled, and you're at the ticket counter, and maybe your initial instinct is you want to get angry, and you think that the airline company is the one who's causing your frustration and irritation and annoyance. But if you start looking inward, you can see that your mind's craving permanence. I want every airplane to take off on time, especially the ones I'm on. That's what the unenlightened mind's going to do. But you need to understand, you live in an impermanent world. There's going to be weather issues. There's going to be maintenance issues. There's going to be crew issues. Now there's actually bombing and wars going on, and they canceled flights, right? Because flights can't go through that area. This is impermanence, right? And you're going to be maybe stuck in the airport, or you're going to be there for 3 hours waiting. And you can sit there and be frustrated all day long if you like and wait for your flight. Or you can look inward. You can be like, this is impermanence. Well, of course my flight's delayed, right? Of course it's going to happen at some point. If you travel enough, you're going to experience a delay in your flight, because there's weather issues, crew issues, maintenance issues. This is just all impermanence. Every single flight cannot take off on time. It is literally impossible, because you live in an impermanent world. So let me know if you guys have questions here. What I'm encouraging you to do to be able to practice right view, because I helped you to understand it intellectually. I showed you how to reflect on it, right? To be able to independently verify it. And you need to do that work. Now, to practice it, you need to be able to look inward and be able to uncover, what is the mind craving? What am I longing, yearning for? And the mind can only be happy if it gets what it wants. That's not what you're interested in. You would like to get to the point where you can be happy no matter what is going on. You can maintain your happiness at all times. So, any questions here on the Four Noble Truths? Have some more questions? Yeah, go for it.
I remember one interesting happened like last time when I was here. The guy named, I think he's Joe, right? He's not here today.
He was here yesterday.
Okay. So he actually asked a question about the impermanence, because I don't know if I remember correctly or not, but I remember that he said that he's actually craving for the impermanence because he want everything like changing a lot. He's traveling around world, see new things, make new friends. So he's not craving for the impermanence, but he's kind of like craving for the impermanence all the time. But things still not gonna be like in his way to go. So is that necessary for everybody? Like we know that we are craving for the permanence, but sometimes maybe other people they do not. They understand that the world is impermanent, but they still have discontentness, right? Because
what you're describing is still a craving for permanence, because he's craving permanent change. He wants things to constantly be changing, right? That's the permanence that he's craving. When things are the same for a period of time, he doesn't like that, right? So he's craving permanent change. He wanted his life to be constantly changing, right? So it's still a craving for permanence. Okay. Do you guys need any more examples to be able to see this? You guys can independently verify this, right? That it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's really eye-opening. That's why the Buddha actually uses the words a breakthrough, that if you can learn the Four Noble Truths and understand it, you can have a breakthrough to be able to see, oh my gosh, I was causing these feelings all along. When mom and dad gave me chocolate and ice cream, I was happy and excited about that. But when they didn't give me chocolate and ice cream, I was angry and frustrated. That was my mind craving permanence. And I thought mom and dad were the ones who were causing me to be angry, when in reality it was my own mind. Do you remember that when you were a kid? That when you got chocolate and ice cream, you were happy, but when you didn't get it, you were angry or frustrated? It wasn't mom and dad that was causing that. It was your craving for permanence. I want that chocolate and ice cream to be permanent. Okay, so you can independently verify this, because as long as you continue to be unskillful, or you're pushing people away, you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you're putting your expectations on people, you'll never live harmoniously with others. You will only be a matter of time before you encounter someone who does things differently than you. That's why at the beginning of the relationship, it's going really great for you, because you have very minimal expectations. You don't want anything from this person. But as you spend more time with this person, you get to observe them in more situations, and your expectations of them grow, and there's more things that you want from them, and there's more things that they want from you, and you can't fulfill their expectations, and they can't fulfill your expectations. And that's why you end up breaking up, right? So if you're interested in long-term sustainable relationships, you're going to need to eliminate this craving for permanence. And that's what's going to help you, so you're not pushing people away, you're not being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you're not putting your expectations on people. So this Four Noble Truths is really eye-opening, because it's helping you to establish right view, to be able to see the problem is internal, right? Your ego is going to want to tell you everybody else is the problem, right? But right view helps you to see that, yeah, you need to do some work here. And there's other people in the world that need to do work too, but they just don't know. They're just not aware. They're going around the world blaming everybody else, right? So the fact that you are here, you can actually learn what is truly causing these feelings, and now you can actually fix it. So this is establishing right view, is be able to see clearly that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Then you can move on to the rest of this path, because if it was everybody else who was causing your feelings, then why are you here? Everyone else is the problem, right? Send them to the temple. You should be at home relaxing, right? But what the Buddha is teaching you is, no, each individual person who's discontent, it's their own mind that's causing that. And you need to do this inner work and this inner growth and this inner development. So that's why it starts with right view, so you can kind of get your head on straight to realize, oh, okay, I need to do some work here. I need to improve the way my mind is processing this world around me. So now we can move on to right intention. These won't all take the same amount of time to teach. It's just that this one takes a little bit of time. So here the Buddha says, in what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So there's three things here: renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. What some people translate this as is right thinking or right thought, because you're trying to form the intention in your mind of renunciation. What renunciation is, that you're willing to let go and give up your false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions, and false views, and your unwholesomeness. There's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that you have right now as an unenlightened being. You're sometimes bitter and harsh and hostile with people, and you need to be willing to let that go. And there's certain false ideas, false opinions, and false views that you currently have in your mind, or else you wouldn't be experiencing that anger and frustration and all those other feelings. There's certain wisdom that your mind does not have right now, right? But with the teachings of the Buddha, you're not bringing in new beliefs in order to get rid of your old beliefs. That's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're bringing in wisdom, and you're independently verifying the teachings. And where you see this wisdom conflicts with things that you've believed your entire life, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it. You need to be willing to get rid of your beliefs and bring in this new wisdom. That's what it means to renunciate, to let go. One of the first false beliefs that you need to eliminate out of your mind is that other people are causing you to be angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. As long as you hold on to that, you will never get to enlightenment. That's why the Buddha is teaching this as the very second step, that you need to be willing to let go of these false ideas, false opinions, and false views. Essentially, you need to keep an open mind and realize that if you experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings, there's a certain lack of wisdom that your mind has. Otherwise, you wouldn't be experiencing those feelings. That's what it means when we say awakening to enlightenment, is that you fully cultivate wisdom. So if you experience discontent feelings, there's certain wisdom about this world that you don't currently understand. And you'll never cultivate that wisdom as long as you don't have the intention of renunciation. You need to be willing to let go of what you currently think about the world and bring in this new wisdom. Okay. Then there's the intention of non-ill will. This is goodwill, because whenever in English you have two double negatives here, non-ill will, that's a positive, right? So non-ill will is the same as goodwill. So non-ill will or goodwill is loving kindness, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill towards others. You need to cultivate the intention or the thinking or the thought of having goodwill towards others. Then you need to have the intention or the thinking of the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because as long as you cause harm to others, harm is going to come back to you. This is the cause and effect about the world around you. You can't cause other people to be discontent. Just like you cause your own discontentedness, other people are causing their discontentedness too. So when mom and dad, brothers, sisters, your life partner, your children, your coworkers are blaming you for their feelings, you can know the truth that you're not causing their feelings, but you can cause people harm. Causing someone harm would be to cause harm to their material possessions, their physical body, or their reputation. If you cause harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, they're going to want to cause you harm back. That's the way that the natural laws work, of the natural law of karma. It's unwise to do that, but that's what people will generally do. That if you put out harm, harm is going to come back to you. It's only a matter of time. It's cause and effect, right? So you would like to get to the point where you're practicing harmlessness, because how could you ever get to peace and joy if you've got this constant harm that's coming back to you over and over and over and over again? So the Buddha is teaching you to practice the thinking or the thought or the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. And then in the rest of the path, he's going to teach you how to not cause harm to others. And that's what's going to help you to get to the peace and joy. So let me just summarize this, and then I'll open up to questions. So right view is the Four Noble Truths and accepting responsibility for your own feelings, intentions, speech, and actions. Because all too often in the unenlightened state, we blame that on other people. We blame our feelings or our speech or our actions on others, when in reality, it's all coming from your own mind. But the mind doesn't understand that. So you need to accept responsibility and accountability for your own feelings and emotions, understanding that it's craving, desire, attachment that's motivating and producing these feelings. These discontent feelings are all being produced by your own mind, by craving, desire, attachment. Then there's right intention, which is practicing the intention of renunciation, where you're willing to let go of your false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions, and false views, with the first one being that other people are actually causing you to be angry. You need to be willing to let that go. And your unwholesomeness. There's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that you have in the unenlightened state. And as long as you keep doing that, you'll never actually be able to get to enlightenment. So you need to be willing to renunciate or let go of things. Then you're going to need to have the intention or the thinking or the thought of non-ill will, which is goodwill towards all beings. And then practicing harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because anytime you cause harm, harm is just going to come back to you. So do you guys have any questions on this first section, the wisdom section, right view and right intention? No questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do is take a little break for you guys. It's about 20 minutes to 11. So let's take a break up to 11 o'clock. And when we come back, I'm going to move on and sharing with you guys the entire Eightfold Path. We're going to go with moral conduct and mental discipline. And I'll explain to you guys how this fits into the overall path to lead you to enlightenment. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you guys afterwards. Okay. Thank you guys. Yep. 11 o'clock. Okay, welcome back to you guys. We're going to keep going and exploring this Eightfold Path more so that you guys can learn more about it and you can actually experience more and more improvement through learning and practicing, integrating this into your day-to-day life. We've started out with the wisdom section, and I helped you guys to understand right view and right intention, and that's the foundation. And now we're going to build on top of that wisdom section, and we're going to start learning about the moral conduct. Whenever you're learning about moral conduct from the Buddha, it's important that you understand that he's not teaching you rules and commandments. Sometimes that's what people think when they're studying the teachings of the Buddha. That's not what he's teaching you. In the wisdom section, he's helping you to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And when you come to understand that, you realize the most unwise thing you could do is be bitter, harsh, and hostile with other people. When you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile with other people, it's coming from your own mind. Sometimes people think that, oh, they deserved that. But that's because the mind thinks that they're the ones who caused you to be angry. When you realize it's your own mind that's causing your mind to be angry, then you realize that bitterness and harshness is just damaging your relationships. And as long as you put out that bitterness, harshness, and hostility, it's all just going to keep coming back to you. If you look in your relationships where you have the most struggles, where you see that you're bitter and harsh and hostile, those people are bitter, harsh, and hostile to you too. And you'll never improve that as long as you continue to be bitter, harsh, and hostile in those relationships. So you're going to need to improve the way that your mind thinks, the way that your mind functions, and the way that you interact with your moral conduct. So what the Buddha is teaching you about this moral conduct is he's actually teaching you the natural law of karma. Some people understand this as the word karma. You might have heard this. This is from the Sanskrit language. The word karma is from the Pali language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so I use this word karma. If it translated to just one English word, I would use that because it would be easier for everyone, but it doesn't translate to just one English word, so I still need to use this word karma. What it means is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. Whenever you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome karma, or wholesome results. When you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. This isn't anything mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's just seeing that whenever you make a decision, either wisely or unwisely, it's going to produce some result or some effect. And what the Buddha is going to teach you in this moral conduct section is how can you make wise decisions about your moral conduct that's going to produce wholesome karma, or wholesome results. And what are the unwise decisions that produce unwholesome karma? This is the natural law that the Buddha is helping you to awaken to. And it's important that you don't believe any of these things that he's teaching about moral conduct. You'll be able to learn it, you'll be able to reflect on it to verify it, and you'll be able to practice it to be able to see the truth that it's improving the condition of your mind in your life. Because as you implement this moral conduct into your day-to-day life, it's going to improve the way your mind functions, but it's also going to improve your relationships and the way that you interact with other people. So just like before, I'm going to walk you through this, and then I'm going to stop and ask for questions to see if you guys would like to ask any questions. So this first one is called right speech. Here's the words of the Buddha on right speech. He says, "In what monks is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech." So here he's talking about 4 things that are all based in craving, desire, attachment, and he's teaching you to eliminate those. Because remember, right view is helping you to understand that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing your discontent feelings. So the Eightfold Path is helping you eliminate your craving, desire, attachment. Each one of these things are based in craving, desire, attachment. And when you eliminate this, it will actually produce wholesome results in your life. So for example, refraining from lying. When we lie in the unenlightened state, it's because there's a craving. The mind wants something, and it feels like if it tells the truth, it's not going to get what it wants, so it will lie. So as long as you're lying, you still have craving in your mind. And when you lie, it's going to produce unwholesome karma for you, because people are going to discover those lies, and they're going to find out that you're untrustworthy, you're undependable, you're unreliable. And now when they experience that, you're going to experience unwholesome results. Like, for example, if your boss finds out that you're regularly lying, they're not going to staff you on projects, right? That would be improving for your career. Your friends and family are going to learn that you're regularly lying. They're going to be less and less interested in associating with you. So you're going to experience unwholesome results as part of lying. if you ever did a lot of lying, like maybe when you were a kid or something, you remember that your mind was maybe obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another, and you were having to keep all your lies straight. How could you get to peace and joy if your mind's constantly having to switch around and remember what you said to one person to another to another? Your mind can be at ease when you just speak the truth because you look inward and you just figure out what's the truth and let me share that. Right? So you'd like to eliminate your lying because that's going to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, and all the unwholesome results associated with lying. Then you'd like to eliminate slander. What this is like gossip. This is where you're trying to damage somebody else's reputation in order to make yourself look good. That's what the craving is. I want to look good in front of other people. And the mind thinks if I diminish and degrade others, that is going to make me look good, right? This is actually not true. When you slander and gossip people, it actually doesn't make you look good because people can see that, whoa, this person's talking in a degrading and damaging way towards others. The mind thinks it's kind of like walking into a dark room and everybody has a candle. And the mind thinks, if I put out everybody else's candle, my candle will shine brighter. So let me put out everybody else's candle. But no, we're in a dark room. We need everybody's candle to be shining bright, right? That's what you'd be interested in. If you're slandering and gossiping people, at the height of this, you can actually be murdered. There's plenty of people that have been murdered for gossip and slander because whenever you damage others, whenever you cause harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. This is where you can see like investigative reporters and things like this that have gone on the news and they've talked about a particular person. They ended up dead, right? Remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And the way the world is that if you damage other people's reputation, they're going to want to cause harm to you. So it's unwise to slander or gossip. At the very least, if you're gossiping and slandering about people, when you're gossiping and slandering with these people and you go away from those people, what do you think they're going to do when your back's turned? They're going to be gossiping and slandering about you, right? Because you got them used to gossiping and slandering, and you're gossiping and slandering about all these different people. When you walk away and your back's turned, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you. So if you don't like people gossiping and slandering about you, you're going to need to stop gossiping and slandering, right? Because otherwise you're causing harm, and this harm is just going to come back to you. And you can eliminate the craving and you can eliminate the unwholesome results as part of that. Then there's harsh speech. Harsh speech is the way that you talk with people based on your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. If you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you'll tend to speak very harsh and bitter and hostile in certain situations. That's because your mind's wanting and expecting something. And now you're trying to put pressure on this other person to do things your way. So you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with your tone, tempo, and word choice because there's some underlying craving that's motivating that. So you're going to need to learn how to speak gentle. But this is going to be challenging for you, particularly in the relationships where you have the most craving and the most attachment. This is why with your parents, with your brothers and sisters, with your life partner, with your siblings, with your children, people like this that you're really close with, this will be the most challenging. And that's where, like, when you come outside and with your friends, you're nice, you're fine, you're polite, you're kind and friendly and gentle. But when you talk with those people, you're having a lot more trouble because the mind's craving, wanting and expecting them to be a certain way. And when they're not that way, your mind's not getting what you want. And that's where that anger is coming up. And now you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to them. So you need to get to the point where you speak gentle with all people, because that's what's going to produce the most wholesome results for you. As long as you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile, it's going to damage your relationships, and all that stuff's just going to come back to you. And there's an underlying craving that's motivating that. Then there's something called frivolous speech. What this is where the speech is unbeneficial and unpurposeful. I don't know if you've ever been this kind of person, or if you've ever been around this kind of person where maybe they're just talking randomly, random chit chat, idle chatter, where it's just kind of like yada 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 yada. yada 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 yada, and you're just sitting there and there's no conversation at all. They're like really broadcasting to you. That's what they're doing. They're just like, oh my gosh, what is this person talking about? Just 20 minutes, 30 minutes, on and on and on and on. There's no break whatsoever. This is called frivolous speech. And there's an underlying craving that the mind has. The mind just wants to talk, right? And it's not really a conversation. They're actually broadcasting. If you do this, people are going to find you to be uninfluential. They're going to be disinterested in talking with you, and they're just going to push you aside, and they're not going to be interested in associating with you. So what you would like to do is refrain from frivolous speech, because that's the underlying craving that you're working to eliminate, where you make space for a conversation, where you talk a little bit, pause, let them talk, then you talk, and it's a nice conversation. It's back and forth, right? So this is the top level of speech that the Buddha is guiding you to be able to understand, to practice, in order to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, and create more wholesome relationships and harmonious relationships, where you're eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And this is going to help your mind to get more and more peaceful, because you're not going to be operating through craving, and it's going to produce more beneficial and wholesome and harmonious relationships for you. Once you're kind of doing this pretty well, you would then like to go deeper into this and practice what's called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. This is a deeper level teaching that you're going to need to work at and dial in all your relationships. This is the natural laws helping you to understand wise speech, where the Buddha teaches you to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. This is a deeper level teaching that's going to help you. It's actually integrating into the Eightfold Path. Because remember, I mentioned to you that the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching, and then there's other teachings that integrate into it. So here, what speaking at the proper time means is there's 3 aspects to this. One is making sure that you're not interrupting people. When you're interrupting people, there's a craving to talk. You're just listening and you're trying to jump in there. You can't wait your turn. So remember, his teachings are helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So you're not interested in speaking at the improper time, which would be to interrupt people. The other part of speaking the proper time is making sure your mind is prepared to talk. If you're angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or these other discontent feelings, it's not the proper time to talk. You're going to experience. One second, actually, let me answer this, because we have this big issue with the bathrooms. This is my wife. Hello. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye. All right. The poop guy is outside, she said. There's a guy that's coming to pump out our septic tank. Joe, do you think you could help me in this situation? He just pulled up in the truck right here. He just needs to know where the septic tank is in the back of the building. It's right in the back. Yeah. He'll know where to find it. Sorry about that. If I don't resolve this, I'm leaving on Monday. And I'm going to be gone for a month. And if I don't take care of this, then it's going to have a lot of problems for them. The septic tank's already backing up on people. So anyway, back to speaking at the proper time. You would like to be sure that your mind is prepared to talk. If you're angry or frustrated, agitated, or annoyed, it's not the proper time to talk, because the only thing that's going to come out of your mind is anger and hostility, right? And you can see in situations where you've done that, it hasn't produced wholesome results for you. And then the third aspect of speaking the proper time is making sure the other person's mind is the proper time to speak. Because if they're angry and frustrated, agitated, it's not the proper time to speak. It's better to go away from that individual, right? So the mind, with its craving, desire, attachment, won't be willing to do these things. It's going to want to jump in. It's going to want to talk with that anger and hostility. Or when other people are angry, you're going to want to talk to them. Your mind's going to have a craving. Just calm down, calm down. You're going to want to jump in there and try to fix their anger, where you can't fix their anger because you're not the one who's causing it. So you need to make sure that you're speaking at the proper time. And then what you say is true. We talked about this up here, that you eliminate lying, and we talked about why that's important. Not just eliminate deliberate lying, but eliminate things that are untrue. Like if you're just hearing some conspiracy theory and you're just kind of spreading that around in order to share it with other people, this is unwise, because when you're spreading unfounded truths, It's just making you look bad, right? You're not interested in going around and building a reputation for yourself as someone who's just spreading inaccurate information. Then speaking gently is the same thing up here, where you would like to eliminate certain tone, tempo, and word choice. You're going to need to pay attention to your tone, tempo, and word choice. And some of you guys speak multiple languages, so you're going to need to look at each one of those languages that you speak and figure out how to speak in a wise way where you can be gentle. Because, you know, in the Thai language, we have all kinds of words to help people to understand that we're being gentle. We have words like ka and kap and na ka. We have kap home. We have so many different ways in the Thai language to make sure that people know we're being gentle. Because the Thai language was based on Buddhism, because Buddhism was around for 8 to 1200 years, and the Thai language was only created about 300 to 500 years ago. So when they created it with Buddhism in mind. But our other languages maybe weren't, like English and things like that. So there used to be words that we would use like please and thank you and yes sir, yes ma'am, things like this. So it would be wise for us to look at all these different languages that you speak and learn how to speak gentle. Pay attention to your tone, tempo, and word choice as you're speaking. Then you would like to speak beneficially. What that is making sure that you have purposeful speech, right? If you're having frivolous speech, that would be the opposite of beneficial. So you would like to be purposeful when you speak. Then you would like to wrap all of this in a mind of loving kindness, where you can now speak instead of with inner hate, but with loving kindness, right? Where you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Okay, so these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But remember, you're not interested in believing any of these teachings. These aren't rules. They're not commandments. It's helping you to be able to see wise decision-making around your speech. And you can look at this and you can independently verify this, because you're not interested in just believing it. You'd like to independently verify it. You've been in plenty of conversations before. You can see what conversations have gone well and what conversations haven't gone well. Look at a recent conversation that hasn't gone well for you and look at these 5 factors. You and or the other person wasn't practicing one of these 5 factors. If you miss even one of these 5 factors, there's the potential that your conversation didn't go well. If you look at that conversation, you'll see you and or the other person weren't speaking at the proper time. Maybe you weren't speaking the truth. You weren't speaking gently. You weren't speaking beneficially. And you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. But then look at the opposite side of this. Don't just stop there. Look at the other side of this. You need to investigate it from all angles to see, is it true? Because these are natural laws. It doesn't matter whether someone's aware of these or not. You were actually practicing these in certain situations. You've had conversations that have gone well for you. Maybe when we were at break, you had some conversations that have gone well for you, right? You can see you and the other person were practicing these 5 factors, that you were speaking at the proper time. What you said was true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And that's why the conversation went well for you. So you can understand that you've been practicing these unconsciously in some situations. In other situations, you weren't practicing these. But instead of just having them unconscious, you need to make them conscious, where you bring them to the forefront of your mind and you're consciously practicing them at all times. So you're gradually bringing your practice up to this point where you're practicing these 5 factors for an extended period of time. Eventually, you'll get to the point where it's effortless. And your mind can do this with no problem. But initially, you're going to need to put a lot of effort into this, particularly in those relationships where you have the strongest cravings and attachments with your parents, your siblings, your life partner, children, people like this. You're going to need to really put effort to practice this, because it's going to be challenging to practice all of these 5 factors. But as you dial this in closer and closer, you're going to be doing what in Thailand we call establishing barami. There's a Thai word. It's called barami. What barami means is the one who people listen to. In each Thai village, there's usually some elders that people know are very successful in life. And when I say they're successful, I don't mean financially successful, because that's usually what people think about when they think about success. anybody can go out and make money. That's not really all that difficult. In order to have success in life, you need to have harmonious relationships. That's what's going to produce success in your life. So there's usually some village elders that have very harmonious relationships, and people know that. And whenever they need help, they know they can go talk to these village elders because they have barami. They're the ones who people listen to. So if you're interested in being influential in your personal or professional life, you're going to need barami. You're going to need to be the one who people listen to. And the way that you establish that is by practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. If you bring your practice up to that and you live your life that way for an extended period of time, over multiple months and years, you will establish barami. You'll be the one who people listen to. People are going to come to you and ask for help and ask for guidance because they can see that you're very wise, that you don't cause harm through your speech. So the way that I needed to do this is I actually looked at these 5 factors in the morning before I would go outside, and I would kind of bring them to the forefront of my mind. And then I would go have meetings during the day. And then at lunchtime, I would look at them again. And I'd be like, man, I really need to start working on this, speaking at the proper time. I noticed that I was interrupting people, right? So I needed to start working on speaking at the proper time. Or maybe I wasn't speaking gently with my wife or something like that, right? So in each one of these situations, you're going to need to dial this in. So if you look at it in the morning, have some meetings, have some conversations, look at it at lunchtime, and now in the afternoon, you can dial it in a little bit more closer. And if you do this for several weeks and months, over time, you'll be able to dial this in closer and closer and closer. So you can establish barami. So while you're working on developing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you might actually come to situations where you're having difficulties and maybe you're trying to practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, but you can't remember what they are. Maybe you're on your phone with your mom and you're noticing this frustration coming up and you're getting angry and frustrated. And you're like, man, Mom, can you hold on a second? I know that there's these 5 factors of well-spoken speech that David was teaching and the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. Hold on a second, Mom. I need to look in my book, right? You can't do this, right? You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to have the time. So you're going to need to know the 5 factors of well-spoken speech in your mind. But while you're working on that, you might actually think about this: speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. If you can remember that, then that will help you to a certain degree, but you're still going to need the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So if you can speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this is going to lean in the direction of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But be sure you remember those in detail. Now, while the Buddha refers to this as speech, we might actually think about this as right communication, because there's many more ways that we communicate other than speech. During his lifetime, it was just speech. But nowadays, we have text messages, we have emails, voicemail, social media posts. We have so many ways of communicating. And if all you did is practice right speech, it's not going to get you to enlightenment. Because let's just say you go into a job interview and now you knock it out of the park. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to hire this person today, right? This person's excellent. But they're going to take a little bit of time and they're going to look at your social media. And now when they go look at your social media, they see you're being bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive. They're probably not going to hire you, right? So if you only practice right speech, you're still going to experience unwholesome results. You need to have right communication, where all your communication is using these 5 factors. So for example, say you're really angry and frustrated, and you go over to your keyboard and you're pounding on your keyboard to send an email. Well, that's not the proper time to be speaking. That's not the proper time to communicate, right? So hit save on that email instead of send, because as soon as you hit send and you put that harshness out into the world, it's all going to come back to you, right? So you would like to be sure you're practicing right communication, that whether it's verbal, whether it's text, whether it's email, social media, or any of these other ways, that you're using all 5 factors at all times. And where you need to, you can remember polite, kind, friendly, respectful. If you guys don't have a version of this book yet, remember you can download it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon. I go into a lot of detail in the book about right speech, because that's a way that you can really cause a lot of harm, and that's all just going to come back to you. So you'd like to really dial that in really closely. Okay. Then we've got right action. Here's the words of the Buddha on right action. In what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So here he's talking about 3 impactful actions that could cause harm with the body, that you're causing harm with your body, and now this harm is coming back to you. He's not giving you an exhaustive list. He's just giving you 3 really big impactful ones about killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. There's other ones as well. And we're going to expand upon this tomorrow when we get to the 5 precepts, because right here he's talking very generally and very broadly. Like, for example, here someone might say, well, what is sexual misconduct? What is that? Right? Because anybody could interpret that any different way. Well, when you look in the 5 precepts, he gives you a lot of detail on this. He talks about things like having sex with minors, having sex without consent, like raping somebody, having sex outside of relationships. All of this is going to cause harm in your day-to-day life, and that harm is going to come back to you. I like to point out here that the Buddha never taught that same-gender relationships are harmful, because if you understand the universal truth of impermanence, that 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults coming together, choosing to have sex, they're not actually causing harm. Whether it's a male and a female, or a male and a male, or a female and a female, there's no harm there. The Buddha was aware of same-gender relationships. He was aware of transgender individuals too, because those things existed during his lifetime as well. If you understand the universal truth of impermanence, it's impossible for every single male to be interested in having sex with a female. And it's very impossible for every female to be interested in having sex with a male. That's impermanence. That's all that is. It's been going on since the beginning of time. There's never been a time in human history where everybody had sex with the same gender, or everybody identified with the same bodily sexual organs, because the body is one thing and the mind is something completely different. And now the mind coming into this body, it can identify as a different gender, right? So we talk about this tomorrow with the 5 precepts, but I like to just give people a heads up here when we talk about sexual misconduct, because sometimes people are like, what does that mean? We're going to explore this in a lot more detail tomorrow as part of the 5 precepts. But one of the things I like to point out for you is this is how wise this individual was 2,500 years ago. He understood same-gender relationships doesn't cause harm. There's people today that don't understand that. And they'll get angry and they'll get frustrated when they see a same-gender relationship. But those people aren't causing any harm to each other. It's 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other. And there's never been a time in human history where everybody had sex with the opposite gender, because that would be permanence. And we live in a world of impermanence. So there's these 3 that the Buddha is talking about, but there's more here as well that you would like to be able to understand. He's not giving you an exhaustive list. Like, notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, right? He doesn't say that, because if you understand this step, you know that that's unwise. Because if you understand the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, if you punch someone in the face, they're going to punch you back, most likely. Or they're going to pull out a gun or a knife, or their friends or family are going to attack you. That's the cause and effect. That's the natural law of karma. Notice he doesn't say that it would be unwise to drag your suitcase through the aisle of a plane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees. Well, of course he didn't say that, right? Because planes didn't even exist during his lifetime. But if you understand this natural law and you understand this factor, that you're not interested in causing harm with your body, you know it's unwise to drag your suitcase through the aisle of a plane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees, right? So you would like to not cause harm with your bodily actions. And there's more than just these 3. These are just 3 big impactful ones that he's giving you the heads up about. Okay, so this is right action. Then he talks about right livelihood. A livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. If you choose to sustain your life off of causing harm to others, harm is going to come back to you. So here he says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. Well, here he's just talking about something very general and very broad, but he actually teaches more specifically in other parts of his teachings. Because remember, the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching, and everything else plugs into it. So if you go look at his other teachings, he shares with you here 5 livelihoods that would cause harm. And if you choose to sustain your life off of causing harm to others, harm is going to come back to you. So he teaches you to eliminate livelihoods that are based in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, or poisons. Whenever you're doing a livelihood based in any of these things, it's actually going to cause harm to others. So therefore, harm is going to come back to you. So remember, none of this is rules or commandments. It's not anything to believe in. You need to independently verify this, right? So let me show you how to do this. Let's just take this one of substances that cause heedlessness. If I was standing on the street corner and I was selling crystal methamphetamine or heroin into the community, I'm causing harm. These people are now bringing me money and I'm living my life off of causing these people harm, right? I'm selling this substance into the community. Now they're going out and robbing and stealing and doing all these other things, taking money away from their families in order to be able to give me money. Now, standing on the street corner, I'm very likely to get beat up. I can get murdered. I can get robbed. I can get arrested. I can get addicted to these substances myself. This is all the harms that are coming back to me as a result of choosing to cause harm and sustain my life off of that, right? So this is just one particular livelihood. But remember, this natural law of karma, it's actually not being controlled by any particular being. It's not anything mystical or magical. It's a sequence of events. It's a natural law that's functioning at a much higher level than human laws. Because in most places in the world, it is illegal to stand on the street corner and sell crystal methamphetamine or heroin or anything like this. But not every substance that causes heedlessness is illegal, because government laws, they are imperfect because they're created by human beings. The natural law of karma wasn't created by human beings, so it functions perfectly. So, for example, if in my home country, if I was interested in being a cashier at a liquor store, the government isn't going to arrest me for that. They're not going to take me to jail for working as a cashier at a liquor store. But if I chose to do that, if you understand the natural law of karma, I'm going to meet with some unwholesome results as part of that. Because a liquor store is where people are going to come to potentially rob me. Sometimes people get murdered at liquor stores. At the very least, I'm going to be dealing with intoxicated people from time to time. And how can you get to the peace and joy of this enlightened mental state if you're having to deal with intoxicated people from time to time? Because it's not necessarily fun to deal with that kind of situation on a daily basis, right? So the Buddha is guiding you of how to get to a livelihood that you can thoroughly enjoy and that you can get to the point where you're not causing harm to others. Because if you kind of drag yourself to work each day, this isn't actually going to be fun, right? You'd like to have something that you have enthusiasm and ambition at, to be able to perform your livelihood, that it doesn't even feel like work any longer, right? So these are 5 livelihoods that cause harm. And if you choose to do these, you'll experience harm coming back to you. There's many different examples that I could give you with each one of these, but I just showed you how to do one, and you guys can look at the others. So now I'll share with you guys another part. This is what's called the first fold of purification. That here the Buddha is teaching you how to perform your livelihood in a way that's going to produce wholesome results for you. That he would like to help you get to a point where you have ambition and enthusiasm and motivation, and you can be wildly successful in your livelihood. So what he's teaching you here is to eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. What scheming is to be corrupt in the work that you're doing. So for example, if I was a politician, if I was like the mayor of a town or something like that, I'm not causing any harm to anybody, right? It's not one of those 5 livelihoods of business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, or poisons. But if I was corrupt, if in the back offices I'm doing corrupt backhanded deals, people are going to eventually find out about that, and I'm going to get caught. And now people aren't going to be interested in reelecting me. So now I'm 10, 15, 20 years into my career, and now I'm out of a job, and I have difficulty sustaining myself, right? So it would be wise to eliminate any kind of scheming. What flattering is just trying to flatter people in order to get them to purchase things and buy things from you. If you've ever been into that type of store where when you walk in, they're like, oh my gosh, that shirt really looks nice on you. It really accentuates the shape of your face. You are so beautiful. You are so handsome. You know, I've got these great earrings. Come over here. I'd like to show them to you. They'll go really good with your shirt, right? They're just trying to flatter you in order to get you to buy something from them. And if you've ever had this experience, you might have been kind of like, ugh. Maybe not even been interested to even buy something from those people. So if you just try to flatter people in your livelihood, people are going to see through that and they're not going to be interested in doing business with you, because people do business with people. They don't do business with businesses. They do business with people, right? So if you can have a good relationship with your customers, you'll see that it'll promote lots of success for you. Then the Buddha talks about hinting. What this is where you're not clear and concise about the work that you're doing and the way that you're communicating. That, let's just say all of us were on a project team and we all need to go brief the boss on what we're doing. Well, if we went in there and we're clear and concise and very precise about what it is that we're working on, then the boss can understand what it is that we're doing and we'll perform very well in our livelihood, and we'll see that we have this growth in our professional career. But if we're just hinting around and we're not very clear and concise, and the boss has to pull information out of us and it's very difficult for them to be able to understand what we're working on, then we're not going to have as much success. So the Buddha is teaching you to be clear and concise in the work that you're doing and communicate that well. Then he talks about eliminating belittling. Belittling is where you're degrading or diminishing other people as part of your livelihood. Like, say you were diminishing your customers, your business partners, your coworkers, or maybe even your competition. You're degrading and diminishing those people, trying to push them down, gossiping and slandering about them. Well, your customers are going to see through that, and the other people are going to see what you're doing, and they're not going to be interested in continuing to have you around or patronize your business. So if you're interested in being successful in the professional world, you'd like to not belittle people, whether it's your customers, your coworkers, your business partners, or your competition. Sometimes people think that the way to look good in a business is to diminish your competition, right? You don't need to do that. If people are asking you questions about your competition, all you need to do is say, well, I'm not 100% sure what they do, but this is what I can do for you. Right? Just focus on what you can do for that person, and then just let them make the choice. They're either going to buy from you or not. And if not, then they'll go visit your competition and maybe they'll buy from them. Right? So you're not interested in belittling people. Then pursuing gain with gain. What this is where you're just doing things for money, that you don't really care about the product or the service. It's just the money. And if you've ever had this kind of job before, you might have dragged yourself to work where it felt very mundane going to work each day, that's all you cared about was the money, that you didn't really have any enthusiasm and ambition about the work that you're doing. You would like to get to the point where you have ambition and enthusiasm in the work that you're doing, that you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing, that it doesn't even feel like work anymore. Right? That even if you didn't get paid for this, you would still do it, that you enjoy it that much, right? If that's not the kind of livelihood that you're in right now, you can actually switch. You can change to something else. You don't need to stay where you're at, because as long as you continue to stay in that kind of job, you're not going to feel fulfilled. You're going to need to get to the peace and joy where you can be fulfilled and really enjoy thoroughly what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, there's people like this in Thailand that thoroughly enjoy the work that they're doing. I bet if you went somewhere around here in Chiang Mai, you're going to find some person on the street corner selling mango and sticky rice, and they can't imagine doing anything else but serving you that mango and sticky rice. They probably woke up this morning, they went out in their mango grove, they one by one picked their mangoes, they probably brushed them off, they put them in their little basket, they brought them to the market, and now they're standing there at the market, slicing up their mangoes, putting it over top of the sticky rice, pouring the coconut and milk over the sticky rice and the mango, and they're serving it to you with a smile. Sure, they're collecting their 40 baht, and they need that in order to sustain their life, but they can't imagine doing anything else other than serving you mango and sticky rice. Right? So what you would like to be able to do in order to get to a right livelihood is you've got to find your mango and sticky rice. What's your mango and sticky rice? What is it that you're going to be so enthused to do that you would do it even if you didn't get paid for it? That the money is just kind of like a side thing just to kind of keep you sustained in the world. And there's no harm in making lots of money, right? You can be rich and enlightened at the same time. There's enlightened people who are rich. But the difference is that those people aren't tied to their money, right? They made their money ethically and morally responsibly, and they're not tied to their money. They're willing to share it and practice generosity. So you can still be rich and be enlightened, but you would like to make sure that whatever you're doing, you have enthusiasm and ambition, that it doesn't even feel like work any longer. Okay, so this is right livelihood. This is what's called the first fold of purification. That this is the first level of teachings and training that you need to be able to get to the first level of purification for your livelihood. There's a second fold or a second level of purification that I'm not teaching you here because this is just a foundational class. But if you're right now, if you're in between jobs or you don't like the job that you're currently in, you can see the first and second fold of purification. It's in volume 12, chapter 14. You can look at that and you'll be able to see it. It has the full teachings of the Buddha in words from me to help you understand it. So it's in volume 12, chapter 14, where you can now see that. I apologize. This is my wife again. Hello. Okay, thank you. All right, bye-bye. Would you mind giving him some money? Thank you. It should be 1,000. Okay. All right. So now to summarize our moral conduct is right speech is not causing harm through any verbal conduct. That when you're communicating with people verbally, that you're not causing harm, that you're eliminating the lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But then in more detail, you'd like to pay attention to the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, that you're speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. But then you would like to relate this to all the other ways you communicate, like text messages, emails, social media posts, all these different things, right? So you'd like to have right communication, and it should all be harmless. Then you would like to pay attention to your bodily actions, not causing harm through your bodily actions, because whenever you cause harm, it's just going to come back to you. So you'd like to pay attention to how you're using your body and you're not causing harm to others. Then you would like to practice right livelihood. This is how you choose to sustain your life, that you're not causing harm to others, that you eliminate the business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. And then you would like to look at how you're performing your livelihood, that you eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. This is going to get you to the point where you can have enthusiasm and ambition about the work that you're doing, that you're not causing harm to others. And now you can feel fully fulfilled with the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Do you guys have any questions on the moral conduct section? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hello. Yes, Dave, we have a question. As for the wrong livelihood, it mentioned pursuing gain with gain. And does it mean, I'm not sure whether I get it wrong, does it mean like anyone engaging financial industry is doing the wrong livelihood because they are doing that only to pursue gain?
No, what it means is that you only care about the money. That's all you're doing it for. So like if you were in the financial industry and you were just chasing after money and you don't really care about your clients and what their success is, you're just out for yourself and your own money, then eventually that craving for more money is going to burn out. And now you're doing a job that you really don't like and you feel mundane. If you've ever had the kind of job where you just went there for the paycheck and that's all you cared about was the paycheck, initially, when you first get the job, you'll probably really like it because you're getting all this money. But then after a few months or so, you don't really like the job very much. And you're kind of dragging yourself to work each day. And you can't get to peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life as long as that's the way that you're functioning, that you don't really care about the the product or service that it is that you're offering. All you care about is the money, because that craving for the money is going to burn out. And then you're going to drag yourself to work each day. So a financial advisor or like a real estate agent or something like this, they're helping their clients to acquire a certain product or service. And they might be having real enthusiasm in doing that. And they are helping them to increase their wealth. But that's not what the Buddha is talking about here. When he says pursuing gain with gain, that is just wanting the money, and that's all you care about. That you're not there for the service or the product. You just want the money, and that's it. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I always thought, recently I've thought that I wanted to work in a pub. It's what I used to do before I came here. And I really, in my mind, when I think about it, I only think, yeah, this is something for me. But the product that I'm selling is alcohol, which causes heedlessness. Mm-hmm. But that my intention isn't to get my customers drunk. Like, maybe I got to think about this more.
Yeah, I can help you. I can see where your mind's challenged. So, what the Buddha is teaching you is the cause and effect, right? Of if you choose to work in an environment where substances are being sold for heedlessness, now there's going to be unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. Because in that situation, you're going to have people that are drunk sometimes. They're going to be arguing. They're going to be fighting. Someone can pull out a knife or a gun. There's all these unwholesome results that you'll experience as being in that livelihood, right? It's very easy for you to experience harms to this body or what you're experiencing as a result of working in this environment where there's substances being sold. So it's not about that whether you're intending to get them heedless or not. It's about by choosing to serve that, being in a pub, you're going to experience fights and brawls and arguments, and someone might throw something, and who knows, maybe your eye gets poked out, right? And now you're blind. You only have one eye. There's any number of harms that could happen. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated people from time to time, and you're not going to be able to experience peace and joy in that type of lifestyle. So the Buddha is teaching you that it would be unwise to do those kinds of things. Whether you choose to do it or not, that's a choice for you to make, right? The Buddha's not here to tell you what to do or convince you what to do or anything like that, but he's just helping you to see this cause and effect. And then when you make decisions, those are your decisions to make, and then you're going to experience the results because of those decisions. So if you're interested in getting to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life, this is the way to do that. And now you'll need to decide what decisions would you like to make, rather than think that the Buddha is trying to convince you of anything, or I'm trying to convince you of anything. You have to decide for yourself. But what we're doing is we're showing you the natural law, and then you make the decisions that's best for you. But you'll find that you will experience unwholesome results continuously in that type of environment. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience any unwholesome results. You'll only be experiencing wholesomeness in your day-to-day life. But in that kind of environment, you won't be able to get to that. Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions you guys have? Okay, so now let's go on to the next section, because the wisdom section helps you to understand the wisdom part. And now we just talked about the moral conduct, which is what would be wise in terms of how you interact with people on a day-to-day basis. But it would be very difficult to implement the moral conduct if you didn't have the mental discipline section. The mental discipline is what's going to help you implement the moral conduct. Because it's wonderful to sit here and think, yeah, I shouldn't speak harsh to mom. I shouldn't speak harsh and bitter and hostile to my life partner. Yeah, that would be great. Okay, well, now go do it. Right? If you don't have the mental discipline section, it will be very difficult to be able to go out into the world and actually do that, where you can be gentle every single time. So this is what the Buddha is going to teach you now, is how to get to the point where you can practice this mental discipline. So all these factors are actually working together. It's not like you're mastering one before you do the other one. You're actually practicing all 8 at the same time, dialing this in and tweaking it in your life more and more and more. Okay, so here's the sixth step of the Eightfold Path. It's called right effort. The Buddha says, "And what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So he's talking about 4 things here that you need to apply the effort to be able to do. And what I've done on this next slide is I've broken it down for you so you can see what he's talking about. He's talking about preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. There's certain effort that you're going to need to apply for this. So right now, there's certain unwholesome things that are not in your mind, and you would like to prevent those from ever coming into your mind. An example of that would be probably killing another human being. You probably have no interest in killing another human being. It's probably the farthest thing from your mind right now. And you're going to need to apply the effort to prevent those types of things from ever coming into your mind. Because once they come into your mind, you might take action upon them, and now it's going to produce unwholesome results. So anytime the unwholesome thought is outside of your mind and it's not currently in your mind, you would like to prevent that from coming into your mind. The second one is abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. Right now, there are certain unwholesome mental states that you have in your mind right now. Like, for example, maybe someone would be in a relationship and then they're craving for sex outside of their existing relationship. This is going to cause harm in your relationships. And now when you see that unwholesome aspect of your mind, you would like to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. Or say anger, frustration, irritation. As you're noticing that coming up in your mind, you would like to apply the effort to abandon that out of your mind. The third one is produce unarisen, wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. There are certain wholesome mental states that you're going to need in order to get to enlightenment, and they're not currently in your mind right now. You're going to need to apply the effort to bring these wholesome qualities into your mind. So, for example, you're going to learn about generosity. That generosity is the giving and sharing with others without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. This is actually helping to train your mind to let go and eliminate craving, desire, attachment. If you're noticing that you find it difficult to practice generosity, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that into your mind because it's not a quality that's currently in your mind. Or say something like compassion. The compassion is concern for the misfortune of others, where on one side of compassion is indifference, where you could care less about what happens with other people. But on the other side of that is worry and anxiety, where it's like, oh my gosh, those children don't have food. What are they going to do? They're not going to be able to eat. Oh, I'm so worried, right? So there's this indifference where it's like, I don't care. That's not my friends, not my family. It doesn't matter to me. But on the other side, you're worried and having anxiety. So the middle way is compassion, where you have concern for their misfortune. So if you're noticing that you don't have compassion in your mind, if you're on either side of this, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that compassion into the mind. And then the fourth one is to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to allow them to fade away, to work to increase their growth in the mind, right? This is any wholesome qualities that you currently have in your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring those into the mind. To support those, encourage those, and maintain those in the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to not allow those qualities to fade away. So, for example, you probably have loving kindness in your mind. right? This loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You probably have that to a certain degree, but it hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development, because in some situations you get really angry and hostile and bitter, and now you're having ill will towards other people. So wherever you see your loving kindness, you would like to apply the effort to support it, encourage it. Don't allow it to fade. Work to bring it to full growth and full perfection and full development, right? Something like maybe sympathetic joy. You probably have sympathetic joy in your mind. Joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. You probably have that in your mind. This is the opposite of jealousy or envy, right? Like maybe somebody says to you, hey, I'm thinking about going to Thailand in 6 months. I'd like to go to Thailand. What do you think? And you're like, oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. That would be a great idea for you. I was in Thailand. It's a really great place. And by the way, while you're there, there's this lady that sells mango and sticky rice on the corner. It's really good mango and sticky rice. You might actually like to stop and give her some money so you can get some mango and sticky rice, right? So you might actually have joy for their success and you didn't contribute to it, right? They're just choosing to go to Thailand. But then in other situations, you might not have sympathetic joy, or maybe you're at work and there's a new position that opens up and you apply for this position. It's a better title, a better office, better responsibilities, better salary. You and a couple of your coworkers apply for it. And maybe one of them get the job instead of you. And now they're walking around the office, they're gloating, they're all conceited. Look at me, I got this new job. And now they come by your desk and they're like, hey, by the way, I got that new job. And maybe you feel this jealousy and envy coming up in your mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that unwholesome quality out of the mind and arise this wholesome quality. Get this wholesome quality to be brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development where it's permeating in your mind. So you're going to need to apply the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities from coming into the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to abandon unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to produce wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind. And you're going to need to apply the effort to maintain wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. The way that I taught this to my son when he was really young is I said, apply the effort to get rid of the unwholesome and arise the wholesome. That's what you're doing as part of this path. So this is called right effort. And these are just examples that I'm giving you guys. What is wholesome or unwholesome that's either in your mind or not, that's going to be unique to you. And the way that you're going to know that of what is in your mind or what's not in your mind is the next step. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without the next step, which is right mindfulness. So here I'll do the same thing. I'll read this to you and then I'll teach it to you. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So he's talking about 4 things here. Body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects. I'm going to explain to you guys what this is. It's actually the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But first, let me just talk about mindfulness in general before I go into this, okay? Mindfulness in general just means awareness of mind, that you would like to develop awareness of mind. Because oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we don't have awareness of mind. We just kind of plow through the world, knocking down trees, burning up the forest, thinking everybody else is the problem. We are perfect, and we're just plowing through the world. I don't know about you, but that's what I was doing for a good long while. And all of a sudden, I started smelling smoke, and I was like, who lit the fire? And then I looked behind me, and I saw all those trees were knocked down. I was like, who knocked down all those trees? And then I learned right view. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the one who did all that stuff, right? So you might be in that same place where you're not really paying attention to what's going on in your own mind. So you're going to need to build this awareness of your mind. And sometimes people just hang out with that for 3 months or so and just work on practicing mindfulness. This word mindfulness shows up in modern conversations quite a bit nowadays. People are starting to use this word, but they're not always using it in the same way that the Buddha used it. So you're going to need to understand it in the way that the Buddha used it. How other people use it, that's their choice, right? But what you would like to understand is that it means awareness of mind. Because what some people will say is they will say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water over to that table? What they're saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water over to that table, right? They're just replacing the word careful with the word mindful, right? So that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to have awareness of your mind. But more specifically, he's teaching you the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because you're going to need to have awareness of all of these 4 things. This is what's going to help you to be able to purify your mind and get to enlightenment. So the bodily sensations. What he's talking about here is being aware of this early warning system that you have built in, that before you get angry, before you get upset, before you get frustrated, any discontent feeling, there's bodily sensations that are happening first that you may or may not be aware of right now. With something with anger, it's going to be tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is the bodily sensations associated with anger. And what the Buddha is teaching you is that when you notice that, to cut it off and let it go. Apply right effort. You know that this anger is arising. You would like to cut it off and let it go. Don't allow it to come into the mind. Because if you allow it to come into the mind, it's going to form a feeling. You're not suppressing your feelings or repressing them. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it becomes a feeling. The Buddha is teaching you the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take. Because if you miss it as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. And now when it's a feeling, you've got to deal with it. You've got to get it out of the mind. And that's a lot harder, right? It's kind of like if you were taking a boat from Indonesia to Australia and you're out in the middle of the ocean, you'd like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water comes into the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with, right? So you'd like to prevent it from ever coming into the boat. Right? Same thing with your mind. You'd like to prevent the anger and the frustration, the jealousy, the guilt, the shame, the stress, the anxiety, the loneliness, the boredom. You'd like to prevent all of those things from coming into the mind. Even the conditioned pleasant feelings, you would like to prevent them from coming into the mind, that you can cut them off and let them go as a bodily sensation. But if you miss it as a bodily sensation, because you will, because your mind's not fully trained, if you miss it as a bodily sensation and it does become a feeling, cut it off and let it go there, right? That's the next best option. If you miss it as a feeling, then cut it off as a condition of the mind. What the condition of the mind is, have you ever been grumpy and irritable for like a few hours or a day or two, or maybe like a week or two? Of course you have, right? Because you didn't understand this. We all have, right? Because there was something that happened and you experienced it, and it triggered one of your cravings. And there was bodily sensations. You didn't know to cut it off there. And then it formed a feeling in the mind, right? And you didn't know to cut it off there. And now you were grumpy and irritable for a few hours or a few days or a week or two, right? So you'd like to cut it off there if you missed it at any of these other places. Because if you don't, it's going to feed what's called a mental object. Mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. All of those 10 fetters that we studied yesterday, those are all mental objects. So here we're talking about ill will, right? We weren't born with ill will. We didn't have ill will when we were born. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? We didn't have that, right? Conceit. Do you remember we talked about conceit, like arrogance and pride, measuring and comparing people, putting yourself above people and below people? We didn't have that when we were first born, right? We didn't go into the nursery like, my hat's better than your hat. My gloves are better than your gloves. My crib is better than your crib. We didn't think like that when we were a little kid, but over time it formed in our mind, this deeply rooted container, this mental object. right? So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is put a blockade at the bodily sensations so that you don't allow your mind to continue to stay wired with this discontentedness. Because what the bodily sensations are doing is it's alerting you that you're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. It's kind of like the mind saying, I'm about to get angry. I'm about to get angry. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling here. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you're like, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. Because if you allow that, the mind's just going to stay wired that way. It's just going to keep forming these conditioned feelings over and over. So you'd like to cut it off as a bodily sensation, not suppressing it or repressing it, but cutting it off and letting it go out of the mind. Okay, so this is right mindfulness. Here's the way that this is going to look in day-to-day life, because what I just described to you is the technical definition of it. But let me give it to you in kind of like a real world scenario. Let's just say I'm sitting on the sofa and you're watching the news and you hear about something and you're seeing what's going on through your eyes and you're hearing it in your ear and you're noticing this bodily sensation of frustration and anger that's starting to arise. Well, you know what's next. Your mind's going to form a feeling, right? So rather than just sit there and allow that to occur, you would like to cut it off and let it go. Turn off the news. Get up and redirect your mind. Go for a walk. Go for a bike ride. Go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. Don't allow your mind to just sit there and dwell in that feeling and actually form the feeling. Redirect your mind. If you do this enough, eventually you'll get to the point where your mind doesn't form these conditioned feelings any longer. There is no arising of anger and frustration, that you fully transformed your mind. But if you just allow your mind to dwell in that and just sit there and keep watching the news, you're not going to ever get to that point. So for a period of time, you're going to need to redirect the mind. Eventually, you'll be able to get to the point where you can watch the news and you'll be just fine. And your mind won't form these conditioned feelings. But for a period of time while you're training, you're going to need to redirect your mind and take it somewhere else. And this is what's going to help you. Okay, so these are the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you'd like to have awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. These are the 4 things that you need to build awareness about. Okay, you wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness, but you wouldn't be able to practice right mindfulness without right concentration. That's what this next one is. Okay. Now, I'm not going to read this to you because what the Buddha is describing here is he's describing to you the results of having put together the entire Eightfold Path and what you will experience. He's describing the jhanas. These are 4 preliminary phases that your mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. We talked about the 4 stages of enlightenment yesterday. Well, these are 4 preliminary phases that your mind experiences before the first stage of enlightenment. These are enhanced qualities of mind. And you're going to need to learn these at some point, but not in a foundational class. This is where you're just getting the foundation. What you need is, how do I practice right concentration? How do I develop it? So that's what I'm going to teach you. In other parts of the teachings of the Buddha, he teaches you to develop a meditation practice and practice singleness of mind. These are the 2 aspects of the mind in your practice that you would need to develop. Your meditation practice is going to consist of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. This is addressing 2 of the major problems in the mind. And then there's 2 other specialized meditations that you can use on an as-needed basis. And those are other meditations like eliminating sexual cravings or realizing non-self. And you'll learn these different things in all the various courses and retreats that I share. You're going to need to gradually build up your meditation practice of 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes. And that sounds like a lot for some people, but depending on what you have going on in your life, you might actually have some unbeneficial things that you're doing that you could kind of cut those things out of your life. And then you'll actually have more time to do things like meditation. We're going to be talking about this afternoon so that you can develop your meditation practice. I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of breathing mindfulness meditation. So you're going to need to build up a meditation practice where you're meditating daily. Then you're going to need to practice singleness of mind. Singleness of mind is to do just one thing at a time. You might have been taught to multitask. If you've been taught to multitask, your mind actually can't multitask. It's physically impossible for your mind to do more than one thing at a time. What you're actually doing is you're actually doing one thing for like 3 to 5 seconds. Then your mind's rapidly cycling to the other thing. You're doing that for 5 or 8 seconds. And then you're rapidly cycling to the other thing for like 4 to 6 seconds. And your mind's racing around like this, right? And now when you get home, you find it very difficult to relax. You find that you're stressed, you have anxiety because your mind's racing around like this. Well, if you've ever been to a horse track and you've seen horses race around a horse track, when they go to the barn, they can't calm down. They're hyped up because they've been racing around the horse track, right? It's the same thing with your mind, that if you're racing around at work all day, racing around, when you get home, you'll find it very difficult to relax. That's because the mind doesn't know how to relax. You need to train it to do that. So if you just do one thing at a time, you'll be able to focus and have concentration and bring forth your full wisdom in any given situation that you're in. So if you're on the phone with your mom, you're watching TV and you're eating a sandwich, you're not actually doing all those 3 things at the same time. You're talking to mom for a few seconds, you're watching TV a few seconds, you're eating for a few seconds. This is why when you get off the phone, you have difficulties remembering what you even talked about. You can't even remember, right? And you might have even said some things that you regret later. Your mind thinks that you're actually accomplishing more things and you're being more productive. But in reality, this conversation that could have been like 15 minutes ended up being 45 minutes or an hour because it took you more time to have the conversation. And you have to go back and clean it up. You have to call mom, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to say those things to you. Now you damage your relationship because you couldn't bring forth your wisdom to practice things like right speech. Or you might have to call her up and say, Mom, I know I agreed to do something for you. I just can't remember what it was. Can you tell me what I'm supposed to do? Right? So you're actually spending more time than if you would have just had the conversation and been done and just focused on that. So you would like to just do one thing at a time. If you're, say, washing dishes and your mind is wandering, you would like to cut that off and let it go, right? You use your mindfulness to be aware that your mind is wandering, and then you apply right effort to bring it back. Or say you're in a business meeting and now you're thinking about your trip to Thailand 3 months from now. Well, that's not going to help you. Right now, you need to focus on the business meeting. Your boss is there. You need to perform, right? So if you see your mind's wandering, cut that off and let it go and come back to whatever it is that you're doing. This is going to help hone your mind and focus your mind. And over time, it'll be effortless, that your mind will just always be focused. It'll always be concentrated. One of the ways that I think about it is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding that steel rod back and forth, initially it's going to bounce around a lot because there's no groove yet. But if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a good groove going. And when it pops out, you're going to know it and you're going to be able to bring it right back. But if you keep grinding that steel rod back and forth, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove. And eventually it'll never pop out, right? Because it's so deep. That's the way your mind works, that you would like to just do one thing at a time, and now your mind will be focused and concentrated. And now you'll have that available to you all times of your day to be able to perform both personally and professionally. You know, there's people that don't understand this practice of singleness of mind, and they didn't understand the natural law of karma. So they were trying to do multiple things at one time. And some of those people are actually dead right now because of their lack of wisdom of the fact of practicing singleness of mind, because they were walking down the street and talking on their mobile phone. And when they were walking down the street talking on their mobile phone, they walked out in the middle of the street, whack, and now they're dead. Right? This is the unwholesome karma. It's not punishments and rewards. There's no being who's overseeing it. It's our choices and our decisions that are leading to any particular result that we're experiencing. So you would like to get to the point where you understand the natural law of karma, that it's wise to just do one thing at a time. And now you can just focus on doing one thing at a time. And while your mind's going to bounce around a lot at first, over time you'll get a groove going and you'll be able to do it effortlessly, because your mind will just always do it. It'll be focused and concentrated. Okay, so just to summarize this, and then I'll see what questions you guys have, is right effort is taking the initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to do this, right? You're not going to be able to get to enlightenment by just having the teachings roll over you. You're going to need to intentionally walk towards enlightenment and apply the effort to eliminate unwholesome qualities and the effort to cultivate wholesome qualities. Then you're going to need awareness of mind, which is right mindfulness, practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, building awareness of those bodily sensations, the early warning system, cutting off and letting go there. And if you miss it, it's going to become a feeling. Cut it off and let it go there. Cut it off as a condition of the mind or the mental objects. And you'll learn more and more about this as you go. Then there's right concentration, practicing meditation and developing the mind with singleness of mind, where you're just doing one thing at a time. So like right now, if you're thinking about lunch, maybe you're looking at your clock and you're like, hold on a second, it's 12:15. David said we're going to go to lunch at 12 o'clock. I'm getting hungry. I would like to get my mango and sticky rice, right? If you're thinking like that, you're like, no, let me cut that off. Let me bring my mind back, right? And now more and more you stay focused and concentrated, right? So you're going to need meditation, which I'm going to teach you this afternoon, and you're going to need this singleness of mind to just do one thing at a time. Okay, so any questions on any of this? Yep, you have a question?
Could you please go back to the mindfulness part?
Sure.
Can you explain a little bit more about the mental objects?
Sure.
When
These
we talk-
are the 10 fetters, right? So like ill will is one, right? You weren't born with ill will, but it's a deeply rooted container in your mind. Like right now, you're not angry. You're not frustrated. You're just, I don't think you are, right? You're just sitting here, just listening, asking questions, right? But you've got this deeply rooted container of ill will in your mind. If somebody triggers that, like if somebody maybe hit your wife, right? Whoa, that anger is going to come up because of that ill will in there, right? So that deeply rooted container, you can get rid of that, where you don't have that anger and hostility and bitterness. You'll still have care and concern for your wife, that you're not interested in people hitting her, but you're not going to be angry and frustrated. You're going to maybe just make wise decisions to ensure that she's safe if you're around her, right? But you're not going to be angry and frustrated, because when you're doing that, you're going to make unwise decisions. Whenever anger is coming into your mind, it's going to produce unwholesome results because you're going to make unwise decisions. So the Buddha is teaching you how to purify your mind of the mental objects, those fetters. You weren't here yesterday, but I think you were in class before when I've taught them. They're back here. These are the 10 fetters. These are all mental objects. Every single one of these are deeply rooted containers in the mind. When we were born, we actually had sensual desire and we had ignorance, but all these other ones got formed over time, right? Like we didn't care how we looked when we were a kid, right? When we were a little baby, we didn't care. We would go outside looking any number of different ways, right? That got formed over time. Of course, we had doubt because we didn't even know what the teachings were. We had a little bit of wrong behavior, right? Because we just didn't know, because we lacked wisdom, but where that's coming from is our ignorance. But it was this central desire and this ignorance that we had when we were a kid, and that perpetuated all the other mental objects to be formed as we were growing older. So when we were first born, we didn't have ill will. That's why we were so bubbly and cheerful as a kid, right? We were like so happy and so excited. Like everything was great. Every day was a good day. But then over time, as we had more and more central desire, this ill will started coming into our mind. We asked mom and dad for ice cream, and they said, no, you can't have ice cream. That was from our central desire. But then more and more our ill will started coming in, and it became harder and harder to let that go. Because as a kid, when we would get angry, it would only last for like a minute or two. But then as we got older, that deeply rooted container became more entrenched in our mind. And now it became harder to get rid of that anger. And now we might even be plotting and planning to get revenge at somebody else because that ill will is so strong towards others. Mm-hmm.
So is there logic when you talk about the mindfulness? So this is like a sequence. First you get this body sensation, right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes a conditional feeling. Then
Yes.
The next step goes to like there's conditional. Can you explain a little bit more about the third stage, mind as mind?
Yeah, this is the life cycle that your discontentedness is going to take. That the central desire in your mind is you're longing, yearning through your eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. You're wanting permanently agreeable contact. And when you get agreeable contact, you get conditioned pleasant feelings. But when you get disagreeable contact, you get painful feelings, right? So the contact is coming through your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself. And now your mind's, because of its sensual desire, you're going to see that as either agreeable or disagreeable. And now you're going to, before you form a feeling, there's going to be bodily sensations. Those bodily sensations are alerting you you're about to experience a conditioned feeling. And it can be either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. Like if you think about shyness, people might say, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach. What they're really saying is I have a bodily sensation associated with this conditioned feeling of shyness that is starting to arise. Right? So those bodily sensations is the queasiness in the stomach, right? And now what you would like to do is be aware of these bodily sensations, because you can cut that off at a bodily sensation and your mind won't experience the shyness. And if you do this enough, eventually it won't even arise. By the time you get to the enlightened mental state, you don't even have to practice this, because the mind's fully purified. All those mental objects are completely gone out of the mind. But the way to get to the point where you can purify the mind is you've got to be aware of what's going on in the mind. So the bodily sensations are an early warning system alerting you you're about to get a conditioned feeling. And if you don't cut it off there, it's going to become a feeling. It's going to form. So that's why you've got to get ahead of it. Sometimes when you go to places like this, people tell you to look at your feelings, welcome your feelings in, make friends with your feelings. Don't try to push them away. Let them come in and then watch them rise and fall away. They have all these kind of poetic ways of welcoming the feelings in. But if you do that, you'll never eliminate them, because the mind's continuing to stay wired that way to form the feeling. So what the Buddha is actually teaching you to do is get ahead of the feeling. That you've got to get ahead of the curve, that you've got to cut it off as a bodily sensation before the mind's even formed the feeling. And if you can get ahead of it, that'll actually transform your mind, because now your mind learns to not form this feeling anymore. So every time you feel bodily sensations, you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. Eventually the mind will be completely transformed where it won't form those feelings anymore. And now your mind is always peaceful, always joyful, that it's not forming conditioned feelings based on what's going on outside. Mm-hmm. So this is there's no secret in the path to enlightenment, but this is like a real linchpin here, your mindfulness. It's really important that you understand this. You'll never get to enlightenment without the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But we could say the same thing about right speech and right action and right livelihood and everything else. But this one is really the thing that's really helping you to see all these wholesome and unwholesome qualities. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're always going to experience this. Now, the things that you won't experience, like conceit, for example, arrogance and pride, measuring and comparing, that isn't a feeling, right? That's an aspect of the mind. So that's why you need to also have awareness of the mental objects, because there's no bodily sensation associated with arrogance and pride in judging and measuring and comparing people. So your discontentedness based in sensual desire, that's going to use these right here, all 4 of them. But something like conceit, it's only going to be the mental object. You need to see the symptom that, oh my gosh, there's the mind trying to measure and compare again. It's putting me above people and below people. And then you apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. So when there's a feeling involved, yeah, it's going to take this process. But with something like conceit, it doesn't do that. It only is going to be seen as a mental object. So there's a retreat that I teach where I spend 1 to 1.5 hours on each individual fetter, explaining to you what it is, the symptoms, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've eliminated it. But you wouldn't be able to benefit from that until you really have the Eightfold Path well underway. So that's why I teach you this first as part of the foundation. And then later on, you can learn about that. But these mental objects is something you're going to need to know what are the symptoms of it, so that then when you see it in your mind, you can apply the effort to eliminate it. Mm-hmm.
What are the differences between the conditional feelings and the condition of the mind?
Yeah.
Number 3.
The difference is the feeling is like the moment the mind experiences the feeling. The condition of the mind is like now when, so like, for example, let's say mom and dad don't give you ice cream and chocolate, right? There's going to be the bodily sensations. Then the anger is going to come into the mind. Then because you don't do anything about it, now for the next few minutes, next few hours, next few days, you're grumpy and irritable. Right? So the feeling is the anger and frustration in the moment, right? But then the irritability and the grumpiness for the next few hours, days, and weeks, that's the condition of the mind. Yep. So you need to be aware of all these things because as you train your mind more and more, you'll catch it as a bodily sensation every single time. And when you get to that point, you're about 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment. But it'll take you a couple of years just to get to the point where you can notice the bodily sensations every single time. So in your process of getting closer to this, you are going to experience conditioned feelings. And sometimes you're not going to cut it off there. It's going to be like a few hours or a day or two, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, you know, I've been angry and frustrated. Like, I got to get rid of this, right? Because the longer you allow your mind to dwell in that, it's just going to stay that way. So you would like to break it up as soon as possible. So the earlier you catch it in this process, the better. But this condition of the mind, sometimes you're not going to catch it until it gets there because you're going to miss it in all these other situations. So you need to be aware of the condition of your mind. Yep. Mm-hmm. Could you use a mic? I have some over here too, actually. Yep.
I'm just wondering about the situation of like programming itself, or like self-hypnosis, or like, you know, kind of changing perception. So I'm kind of wondering if that mental objects in a way, because I kind of have this vivid memory of imagining myself in a little person in my head driving this body, and I feel like it kind of like I had that image for a few years when I was in my early teens, and I feel like that kind of influenced my perception of the world. After that, it made me feel very detached in some ways. So would you call that a mental object or something?
No, the mental objects that we're talking about here with right mindfulness is the 10 fetters, all the 10 fetters, those individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered. That's what you need to build awareness of, because you wouldn't be able to get rid of them if you didn't understand what they are, the symptoms, and then how to eliminate them and how to know that you've eliminated them. So in your day-to-day life, when you're walking down the street, if you didn't have awareness that your mind is judging other people, you wouldn't be able to fix that. You need to be aware, oh my gosh, I'm looking at that guy's shoes and I think my shoes are better than his shoes. And I'm looking down on him because his shoes are dirty and I'm trying to measure and compare. I need to stop doing that, and you need to cut that off. So that's what we're talking about here, is having awareness of each one of those mental objects. So this isn't something that you guys are going to really have right now, right? You're going to be working on all these others. But then once you understand what the mental objects are, then you'll be able to build more awareness of them. So right now, that's why I say a lot of people just kind of hang out with this general awareness when they're first getting started, and then they start to build awareness of these first 3 foundations. And then as they learn what the mental objects are, then they start building awareness of those. So you need to learn what the fetters are in order to be able to have awareness of them. That's the symptoms of them. Okay, is that everything? All right. So it's basically 12:30. So I'll just end this section by thanking you guys for your dedication to learning and understanding the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. As you guys see, it's very deep, it's very comprehensive. You're going to need to study it more than one time. That's why you saw some people showing up that weren't here yesterday. These are students that have learned with me in the past, and they're coming back for a refresher. They were interested in a refresher on certain parts of this. So you're going to need to revisit this multiple times. So don't think you can learn it today and go out in the world and practice it perfectly today. It's not possible. You're going to need to gradually chip away at this, but you can dial this in closer and closer, and that's what you're going to see produces the best results for you, that you're going to see things gradually improving with your mind in your day-to-day life. So this is the path to enlightenment. You're going to need to know this very detailed. So right now, since it's 12:30, do you think we could shorten up lunch a little bit where we do like an hour and 15 minutes, come back at 1:45 rather than 1:30? Are you guys okay with that? No one's angry, nobody's upset? Nobody's craving for an hour and a half? Because you guys know I usually give you an hour and a half, right? So there you can verify the Buddha's teachings, the third noble truth. When you don't have craving, desire, attachment, then you're not angry. You're not frustrated. There's no discontentedness. So everybody's cool? All right. All right. So there we go. So we'll get back together at 1:45, and I'm going to teach you guys meditation, and then we're going to actually do it. So enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you guys afterwards. Okay? All right. Take care.